Sony has a Marvel-ous showcase. Little loud? Little loud there?
Scary.
Oh my gosh, that was so loud. Why was that so loud?
Because I accidentally had it turned all the way up. So, welcome everybody to Triangle Square to PlayStation podcast. I'm your host, Brett Beck, and alongside me, as always, is Mr.
Saul Bridges. Bringing you guys lucky episode. I don't remember, 228. I was my ears.
And I'm also joined by Chris Figs.
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing?
Doing well, I suppose. I'm going to answer your question because Brett did not.
Sorry. You ever have I'm really bad about not saving certain people's numbers in my phone, not on purpose. I just don't. Mm-hmm. And then I'll get messages and I'm like, who could this be? And the message just says, "Are you busy?" Yeah.
Sorry.
But
did I ever tell you about the most upsetting text message I ever got?
No.
I got a
regardless
text
of the information
that was just a picture of a crystal bowl filled with
You did.
It was I'm still uncomfortable about it because it felt like a threat. It was a threat. And I never got a text back. It was like a crystal bowl with like those chocolates that are like wrapped in foil.
Right.
And that's all the text was. And then I was like, who is this? No response. And I sent them back another text couple hours later. I was like, please tell me who this is. And they didn't respond again. And it's very uncomfortable.
So what do you think the threat was, Chris? If you don't respond in the next 4 minutes, I will eat all of your grandmother's candies.
Maybe, or I'll beat you with this crystal vase.
Would you have been more worried if you couldn't quite put your finger on it, but you recognized that glass bowl?
That was the problem, is I've definitely seen that glass bowl before.
Uh-oh.
I've seen it, and then there was those pods in the back, like the storage pods. And this is very uncomfortable.
I don't know what this means. Please, make your intentions known. Well, if you are new to the show, stick around where you can find out where you can watch and or listen to us. But we like to start this show off the right way, and it's a very simple way. Saul, starting with you this week, big buddy. What you been playing this week?
I haven't played a lot this week at all. So we'll get into something in a little bit in regards to the Sony showcase, PlayStation showcase. But involving the Tiny Tina's Wonderland, it made me kind of miss the fact that I haven't played Borderlands since Borderlands 2 on the 360. And I think I've said it on the show before, but I loved Borderlands so much to the point of I played so much of it, I got really just kind of tired of it. Well, I decided to buy Borderlands 3 on sale. It's $20 right now on a PlayStation store. And I started that up yesterday. But before that, unless you count the Yu-Gi-Oh! Dueling Simulator and, of course, the weekly Sea of Thieves, I haven't played a single video game this week.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've been kind of just not really playing video games at all. Me and my wife were talking about yesterday that I'm going to restart my Animal Crossing world on Switch for fun. But, I'll probably do that today, but I'll probably play more.
How do you go about
Borderlands.
doing that? Because I know that they talked about there only being a single save. So what happens if you start a new world? It just washes your other save away?
Yes, I guess so. For me, I'm not entirely too sure, but I just going to delete the save if there is one. I am not entirely worried about my world. And actually, as a matter of fact, I don't know if I transferred my save over for that world to begin with.
To your new Switch?
Yeah. So at that point, there may not even be a world worth doing so, or even having. So,
go
ahead. Well, I was gonna say I like playing these games around the fall time. That's when they're the most comfy, cozy to play, and it's starting to get to that point where this might be a me thing, but for me, it's you go out in the morning and it's a little chilly, and you kind of feel that, you're yeah, it's getting to be fall. It's a different kind of feeling. And that just might be me entirely, but
sweater weather, as
yes, absolutely.
We don't have much of that sweater weather around here because it's right as soon as you get used to that, and you're like, oh yeah, it's also blazing hot at the end of the day.
Yeah,
true, but
and then suddenly it's just cold. So
But that's I kind of have been lazy this week on a way. We've been watching a lot of movies, and I'm kind of in that little, not funk, but just in that little mood of not really wanting to play video games at all, or nothing's interesting me to play, I should say.
So Chris, Saul, can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
You talked last night about Malignant.
Yes.
Because somebody else happened to just say, watch Malignant and wait for the prison cell scene. Is that the scene?
It is. Okay. That is exactly what I was talking about last night.
Yeah, you didn't specify, but since I
didn't to see want
it, let's just see. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have HBO Max, I highly recommend you watch Malignant. I will say that for the first 40 minutes of that movie, it is not great at all. Did you watch it, Chris?
No, I have not seen it yet.
So it was to the point where me and my wife were like, let's just literally fast forward to see the twist. We didn't do that. And I'm really glad we didn't. It was like we were almost going to turn that movie off, and then we made it to the twist, or not the twist. I keep saying twist. It's not a twist. It's just the climax. And it was so worth it.
Okay.
Yeah. Weirder that happens in movies. But Chris, I think Saul was lobbing the question over to you to what you've been playing.
I sure was.
He was. I've played a bunch of Fist, Apex Legends, and Tales of Arise, baby. It's time.
You have been blowing it up about Tales of Arise and how much you like it in comparison to your love of Berseria, which seems to be dampened in result of playing Tales of Arise.
Yeah.
Which, not to say it's a bad thing, but you realize how much better this is in comparison to what you thought of Berseria.
Yeah. Well, realistically, I think a lot of it was Tales of Berseria was one of the first real JRPGs I played, I guess. It was Persona 5 Royal and that. And then I just really liked the design of the main character. So I was super in. But then this was just everything has been better than that so far. So I'm okay, I guess I was wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, because Berseria is the one that I said that I played maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours of. And it was one of those things where I felt like I was just clawing my insides to keep myself pushing to play it because I was so bored. It
starts slow for sure. And I think it gets better once everything happens. The inciting incident happens and everything starts. But this one starts from the jump. And I'm okay, this is definitely... Because I go into it I've never played a JRPG before, so I guess this boring stuff is normal. I'll wait until it gets fun.
Sadly, that's actually true.
Yeah, because people will be like, "Oh, Final Fantasy 13 is great." When you play for 40 hours, it becomes Game of the Year. I guess that's what I have to do in these things.
Final Fantasy 13 at 40 hours in is still not Game of the Year. It's probably the best the game gets.
Yeah.
But don't get that twisted. I'm not saying it's a bad game, but it's also not great. So
yeah.
But yeah, Berseria is an interesting case because it kind of reminded me of my time with a game that I know Saul also got, and I thought I was going to love it so much, and I think Saul actually did too. And initially, it actually did a better job than Berseria, but then it started waning pretty quickly, which was Star Ocean 5.
Oh yeah,
Integrity and Faithlessness, or whatever it was called. That game went from me being so stoked on it, and actually the openings are pretty similar between Berseria and that. I feel like, at least to my memory. But I just dropped both of them. I played Star Ocean 5 probably 5 hours in comparison, and I just dropped it. I played Zestiria before Berseria, when it first came out, for maybe 7 or 8 hours, and then dropped it. I don't know. I'm wanting to get back to it, and you being so hyped on it and saying it's better than Berseria bodes well for me because I want to get back to liking that series. Yeah, it's just been a long time since I really have. Like I said, Xillia is the go-to example of where that series was great, but then I felt like the problem kept being that they just kept trying to make that game again, and more so than anything, just how bad their tech had done. But yeah, Chris, you need to make you a Yu-Gi-Oh deck and then just duel with us on this simulator thing we have, so you can be part of the Yu-Gi-Oh boys.
I mean, I'll do it. Let's rock.
I'll do it. Don't you tempt me.
I'll play some Yu-Gi-Oh. Like I said, I got my deck. Look, it's right here. Look at that. Yu-Gi-Oh
your 80
cards.
card deck?
Yeah, my 80 card deck. I have a dragon in here. That's cool.
There you go. Now we know Chris is a dragon deck archetype.
Yep.
All right, boys. Well, I guess that means it's time to. I guess is that all you played? Oh, let me back up real quick.
Yeah, Fist and Apex.
We can go into what I played, and that's Fist. All I've played all week since I've gotten back, because Fist came out Tuesday, and I got back Monday. Did a little dueling, and then caught up on some stuff around the house. And then Tuesday, Fist came out. I came home for lunch break, started playing it, and I've been playing the heck out of it since. Yeah. How far are you?
Let's just say I broke out of something.
Okay, I got you. I know where you are.
Yep.
All right. Good. Still enjoying it?
Well, I haven't played it, so I mean,
yeah. You seem like you're acting like me, where you play another game that ends up catching your attention, and even if you like the other one, you're just like, "But I'm on this one right now."
Yeah, that was the thing. Is like I was very much looking forward to Tales, and once Tales came out, it was everything's done. I haven't even played Apex, which should tell you, like,
that tells me everything.
Yeah.
I really like so far. I'm really liking Fist. I'm very surprised with how good it is, and also this one's a kind of an interesting topic here for me. But there's a number of the China Hero Project games that look really good, but there's also this thing where there's kind of like an underarching thing. Definitely, as you get a little further into Fist, where it's all about like oppressive government. But it's a game from China. And it kind of makes me wonder, like I was wanting to look up, I'm going to do that right now, that Billy Games that made this, where are they located? Because they're Shanghai.
Oh.
I was really curious because I was like, man, this game just makes me think, like, I wonder if this is like Hong Kong. Because it's very interesting, like listening to the game. It's almost one of those things that makes you think. I'm surprised that this slid through the censors without any issues. But I guess it's probably because the Chinese government doesn't consider themselves to be authoritarian. Yeah. But either way, it's very interesting playing that game, and I really do like it. And another game I ended up turning you on to whenever we were talking about this was Lost Soul Aside, which you had not seen anything of.
Yeah, that looks sick.
And it does look sick. And there's a handful of other games that are coming that look really good. So I guess I wanted to take this because I know there was an episode where Chris, you and I went in kind of heavily on our issues with sometimes how China moves in and starts trying to look at our media. But actually getting like media coming out of China, it doesn't mean I can't be excited about that. I don't think that those two things have to be equal. There's some really cool games coming. I just, in case there's someone that's back there like, oh, so you're playing Fist, a game from China, but you had complaints about China. Well, yeah, I live in America too. I have complaints about America, but doesn't mean everything that comes out of it's bad. But I am really enjoying the game, and I'm excited about what's coming next. But Deathloop is on the horizon, so I'm really trying to be like face down into Fist to
fisting yourself all week.
yeah, I've been fisting all week, but I'm really excited because I want to see what happens with Deathloop. So it looks really good. If I can beat Fist by then, which I'm pretty sure I'm close.
Yeah.
Nice. So,
like I said, I do really like Fist. It's just Tales, man. See, I don't know. I have a feeling I won't get back to Fist, even though I like it, because it's Tales, then Deathloop, then it's Apex Season 11, and then it's
And if you choose to hop into Far Cry 6, you got Far Cry 6 not too far down the line. There's a lot of stuff coming. Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but
yeah. And actually, they're all not very far away. They're all about a month away. Yeah, busy time for the year, but that's okay. All right, guys, we're going to get into the news. And the news this week, clearly the big thing, and we're going to save the majority of the discussion, is going to be the showcase. But there is some other stuff, even though, of course, the showcase ends up kind of taking that priority and kind of drowning out the rest of the news, as is the point of a showcase. Because, coming back into Sony doing something like this, it kind of makes me think they had the benefit, I guess maybe you'd call it, but even though they never had issues with it before, of being not around any other event. So you have this thing where like it just came and smacked all the news around because that's pretty much most of what was happening. Whereas normally when you do these in the context of like an E3, then what happens is every presser gets like a few hours of dominating the news to itself before the next press conference goes off. And then that round dominates the news. And for a long time, Sony was always the last. So it's interesting coming back around to that. But before we get into all the heavy Sony news, first thing is pretty interesting, actually. It says Elden Ring will apparently have Watchtowers in the game. And in case you're thinking of Ubisoft Towers, I wouldn't worry too much. I don't think that's what it is. because it says that it allows players to zoom in and find dungeons that will automatically be added to your map, which kind of makes me think of like Breath of the Wild, where you climb up on the Sheikah towers or whatever and use your Sheikah slate kind of as a little viewfinder. And then also Shadow of War had these little eyes that you could go to and use them and focus on the land to find like hidden treasures and stuff like that. That would then pop and add to your whatever you want to call that top rotating compass thing, I think is what it was in that game. That's a pretty cool setup. Saul, I know that you're excited for Elden Ring. Is that something you like to see, this more very open world design as opposed to some of these other games? It sounds like if it's going to be that, it's going to be more of a sprawling map than a sectioned off map like most of the Souls games have been.
Yeah, I think that's if this is true or whatever, I think that's what makes me the most excited for it, is because it almost confirms that it is open world. And I'm really curious to see how a FromSoft open world game works. So I think that more so just sets me up for the excitement of how it's going to end up working out.
Yeah, so one of the things, just to give a little more detail into that, this actually did come from one of the team members, and they were talking about how the world being bigger and wanting and begging to be explored, but then being easier to miss things because of the fact that its scale is a lot bigger, that they wanted to have a way for players to not just accidentally miss everything. So this was their solution, to be able to have players find something. So in a way, I guess it still does what the Ubisoft towers do, but instead of just climbing it and then, synchronizing or whatever you call it in all those games, and then suddenly revealing everything, it's more like you still have to put the work in of looking around the area, zooming in and looking at places of interest. Yeah. And I think that could work. I mean, I definitely think that that's a workable solution. And it makes sense to their scale of the game. And I remember that there was something from a while back where Miyazaki was talking about how he loved the way that Breath of the Wild encouraged exploration. So if you're going to have a big map and you're doing that, it's going to be interesting seeing a full-on open world from them.
Yeah. I'm just excited for it for that exact reason.
Yeah. You think game of the year? You think you're going to go ahead and...
It's hard to say. I can't. I got to play it first.
Yeah, it is. And it's coming, February, January? What was it?
February.
I can't even remember now. Yeah, I know it's not too far off. So we'll see. A lot of stuff, a lot of competition at the beginning of the year. Next thing off is off the back of next gen upgrades, which we kind of talked about last week, or you guys did. I was missing. I'm back though. Don't worry. Ubisoft announced that Far Cry 6 will have free upgrades available to players who purchased the PS4 version and eventually want to move on to the PS5 version. Probably get a little more into people's thoughts on that when we go to the community's take. Next thing up, though, pretty cool. As we've become the accidental de facto Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl podcast, the fan podcast that we are, the game recently got a gameplay breakdown, and it showcases a surprisingly competent set of mechanics and a very Smash Bros. Style, which I think a lot of people are going to like, because one of the complaints, even though I still enjoyed the game, about PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was that they didn't rip off Smash Brothers hard enough. It's like they got close, but then still tried doing something unique within it. Whereas it looks like Nick is just like, clearly people like Smash. If we just make Smash with Nick characters, we got a winning formula. So Chris, I know you've been excited about it and we've been talking about it. How you feeling about the gameplay shown?
I'm feeling really good. I think it looks sick. I just like how hardcore it is, or at least appears to be. And I really enjoy that, like, because I think I was telling you, I've been watching a lot of Smash streamers talk about it, and I just really find it fascinating how excited they are for it. I'm like, okay, sure. Like I watched multiple like 10-minute long breakdowns of why wave dashing was important. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what you mean, but that sounds hardcore. I'm down.
real meta competitive talk.
Yeah.
Have you ever been like a big Smash fan?
No, I don't like Smash.
So why are you excited about this one when you're not normally into Smash? Is it because of the characters? Is that primarily what doesn't draw you to Smash, or what?
You want an honest answer? Because I think it would be really funny if Nickelodeon did it better than Smash Brothers. That's why I'm so interested in it.
So it's less about whether or not you're even liking the game. It's just more of, or is it to you, if you like that game more than Smash, then it kind of proves your point?
No, it's one of those things where like, I'll buy this game, I'll spend 10, 15 hours with it on my own, and then when friends come over, I'll be like, yo, y'all trying to play some Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl? That's a hard name to say, apparently. And we'll definitely have a good time playing Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, so I'm excited.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I think there's almost no way this game reviews or sells better than Smash just because of what Smash is. But if this game, as one of many games that have tried coming in and doing the Smash style, is even like remotely successful, it'll be really interesting to see. When I say remotely successful specifically in catching some kind of win like Smash Bros does. Because Smash Bros Ultimate's been a juggernaut. Saul, I know that me and you have been off and on Smash people for years. What you thinking about this?
It's one of those that, like, I think I was kind of done with Smash whenever the newest one came out.
Yeah.
So I was just not really excited for it, just because it's so Smash heavy, or it looks so Smash heavy, I should say.
Yeah, I could see that. The biggest thing for me is that it's a mix of Smash Ultimate has instilled a little bit of a problem. When you have every character that you've basically ever had in any of the games in a single game, so you have 70 fighters or whatever it is, you get to this thing where now my brain, even though I'm not nearly the Smash fan as many, my brain's kind of like, so you're telling me we're getting a Nickelodeon Smash style game, but they don't have the Angry Beavers like we were talking about pre-roll. It's just, all it is for me is a long list of characters that I can't believe are not included in this roster. And that's about where I'm at. I'm excited for it, but I'm kind of excited in the way that Chris is, where I liked PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, and a big part of that was because of the way that it felt a little more like you were playing each character's movesets. Thankfully, to the way that Sony does their stuff, it felt like you were playing each character's movesets just in a game where they were all pushed together. Whereas a lot of the times I felt like Smash's characters, they're doing things they wouldn't normally do, so you're not really playing them that way, which is not a fault. They still do a great job with the fighting mechanics, but yeah, I'm kind of like Chris. It'd be interesting to see them even get close to Smash's success with what is arguably just a ripoff.
Yeah, exactly. Just be hilarious.
Next thing up, Kingdoms of Amalur's Fatesworn expansion, which I'm super interested in because I'm curious as to how it looks in comparison to the remaster itself, considering its new content. But it's in the final stages of production, so that's not a date or anything. There's no date given, not even a timeline at this point. But it sounds like it should be relatively soon, maybe by the end of the year, but if nothing else, maybe the beginning of next year. I think my bigger thing here is wanting to see what this means for the future of Kingdoms of Amalur. Chris, how you feeling about that?
I mean, I'm excited to keep playing it. I love Kingdoms of Amalur, and I want to see what they do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember that you bought the remaster, just like I did. I couldn't remember if you got through all the way through it, or if you just kind of go back to it every now and then.
I got most of the way through it, and then, in typical fashion, I realized that there was a trophy for beating it on hard mode, so I started the game over again after playing for 30 hours, and I haven't played.
It took all the wind out of your sails.
Pretty much, yeah, because I would have it. I did every side quest, everything, and then beat it on hard mode, and I'm like, oh, jeez.
Yeah, there's a lot of things about the way that game handles RPG stuff that I really enjoy. Definitely its system between being able to basically fluidly change your class with the fate system, but it's just, I'm so curious about how this goes, because even if this just ends up being a game that looks more or less exactly like the remaster, just new content, it's more of, if this could do well enough, do we eventually get a full-on brand new Kingdoms of Amalur that looks like a next-gen title, which looks aren't everything. The game feels great and plays well, and that's the most important thing. But it would be kind of cool to see it in all the trappings of a modern AAA game, or even a modern AA.
Yeah, I would think we'll get another one. But yeah, it's really just the gameplay of this, and I really like Todd McFarlane and his art style and stuff. I think he was involved with this.
Well, he was involved with the original one for sure. I'm not sure if he came back with for this or not. That'd be cool if he did. Know. I mean, if not, nice. His art style's already informed the style of the world anyway. So, yeah. All right. Yeah, I know, Saul, you've never ended up playing Kingdoms of Amalur, so I think you're just gonna. It's a speak now, forever hold your peace, and I think you're just holding your peace. So
yeah, I've been wanting to. Or I said I've been wanting to. I still am gonna get around to it eventually. I just don't know when.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Next thing up is, although Kena is not out yet, the developers have expressed interest in moving on from the world, at least in terms of games for the time being. They've expressed other mediums that the world may continue in, such as TV or film, which I think is kind of cool. I think the only thing that makes this a little odd is that this is before the game comes out, and I think people are going to take this kind of headline quote and think it means that they don't think the game's very good, or they don't think it has a high chance of getting a sequel. Which, if you actually go into it, it's not. They're kind of talking about wanting to move on and explore new ideas within the same style of game. But they want to still mess with the world. So I think that this is more of they want to flex their game development muscles in a different way while not necessarily abandoning the property. I don't think that this is a bad thing. I don't think Sony had any reason to want to stop them from talking about this in a PR sense. How do you feel about that, Saul? Do you agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I'm kind of neutral on it, to be 100% honest. It's weird, right? Like, I don't know. It's, for me, I don't know. Like, how do you feel in agreement? Like, do you think? I just don't know. For any time any kind of medium crosses into another medium, I'm not a fan of. And I think that's kind of an unpopular opinion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that this should have just stayed a game. And if they're trying to make it into a TV show, that's fine. Or a movie, I guess that's fine. But at that point, it's like what they did with Ratchet and Clank, where it's like, what's the point of the movie when the game exists? The game is the superior product in this regard. So why? Right.
Yeah. And clearly you're right in that regard, right? Because the 2016 Ratchet and Clank was sold gangbusters and reviewed incredibly well. And the movie flopped so hard.
Yeah. And I guess at that point, it makes sense when you take a movie or a book or a TV show and you turn it into a game, because you take something that you're viewing and make it more interactable. But I don't know why you would regress, I guess, and make something that is already at almost the peak of, like, the peak style or the peak way of being able to interact with something, and then make it only viewable. Right? Like, I guess that's the same kind of thing of, like, I
get what you're saying, because you're saying that one is taking it, but I as much as I understand where you're coming from, and I think that there's some merit there, I would argue that just as much as, and I think Chris looks like he's got something to say, so I'll lob it to you in a minute. But I would say that for me, I think taking a book or a movie and switching that into a either taking that exact thing and making it more interactive by moving the games, or expanding the world by making a new story in an interactive sense within that world, is more of just, how do we take this idea and explore it in a different type of medium? And while you take something like that and go to interactability, maybe there is some merit for certain people to be like, okay, what if we take something that was born out of an interactive mindset and strip that away and tell a new story in a non-interactive way? I don't think it has to be a bad thing, but I do kind of get where you're coming from, of starting with something being conceived with the idea of it being interactive and then working backwards. Seems like, if nothing else, it's going to be more challenging potentially than the inverse. But it's hard to say, because there is plenty of bad game movies and there's plenty of great movie or games based off of movies as well. Like Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay is an amazing game. And it's
X-Men
just yeah, there's plenty of examples. So Chris, you sounded like you had something going on. So what's your thought on that?
Well, in terms of just to put my thoughts on the news, I don't understand why you would kneecap your game like this. First off,
so when you say kneecap, do you mean like because of the timing of the news?
Well, imagine if Spider-Man 1 had come out and they're like, by the way, we don't want to ever make a Spider-Man game again. You know, we'd rather make a Spider-Man movie. Like, why would you say that? To be clear, it's not that they said that they don't think they'll do a direct sequel, like, immediately. I just don't get why you would say that at all until, like, later, you know, like, I don't know. It just seems like a weird thing to say, but I don't know.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, on that particular thing, I understand where you're coming from. Definitely in a time period where people like serialized media of any sort, they like this idea of, I'm going to play this, and then in a short-ish, maybe, hopefully amount of time, I'll be able to play an expansion of it if I like it. And it's that mindset of going in with, like, but you can always come back for more because they're going to do something else. Whereas to me, I think it's the timing, right? I think if they said this exact same thing a year after Kena released and sold the majority, even if people are bummed about it, it probably doesn't do anything. Exactly. But there is a chance, no matter, I don't know how big it is, that saying this right now actually may actively dissuade people from it, because they may be like, I don't want to get super invested in the world and then the world go nowhere else. I don't think that, I don't agree with that. I think something can be a standalone media, and I wish more often that would happen sometimes. But at the same time, everyone, including me, gets hyped on, dude, did you see the new God of War sequel? Yeah. Did you see the new Horizon sequel? You know,
even more than that, I would say, especially in this situation, it makes me personally less likely to buy it at launch, because I'm like, okay, they're not planning on making a sequel. There's no rush at all for me to play this, which means I will almost definitely never play it. You know, I shouldn't say that, because I'm actually looking forward to Kena, but you know, if there's no if you're like, we don't want to revisit this right now, it's like, okay, then I guess I'll wait until it's $4.99 or whatever it is, because there's no impetus to get to the next one. Sure. And I just think saying that before it comes out is weird. Say it after, like you said, when you got your sales, but why would you say that now when, you know, there's other stuff coming out, you're releasing in a busy time period, and then you're like, this is going to end and it's final, and that's cool. Again, there's no issue with that, but I think, like, do I want to play Kena or do I want to play Far Cry? It's Far Cry. And then it's, do I want to play Guardians or do I want to play Far Cry or Kena? And then it's Guardians. And then it's, do I want to play Wolverine or do I want to play Kena? And it's Wolverine. You know what I mean? It just keeps going down the line. Going.
So the only thing I'd say about that is that is viewing it from the idea of it continuing as a game. Now, do you think that the fact that it may continue on afterwards as a TV or movie? So maybe not you, but do you think, and looking at more of the potential customer base, that there are people that might actually find some impetus to go ahead and play it, because the fact that probably they'd be like, oh, well, this series or this movie is going to take place after the events of this, so I need to play the game in order to, you know, or if I was interested, I can play it now.
You could get me to play a game that looks like Kena does, but I don't have a 6-year-old, so you're not going to get me to watch a movie that looks like Kena does, if that makes sense.
That's a rough take, because there are some fantastic movies that look like Kena does,
and I'm probably not going to watch them. So, I get that.
You're sounding a lot like Blake right now. What have you done with Chris?
Okay, you know what? Sure. But still not going to watch. Like, I don't actively... There's a difference between Into the Spider-Verse and Frozen. And I'll tell you which one I'm never going to watch until I have a child who forces me to.
Into the Spider-Verse.
It sounds like the reason... It sounds like the reason is because you like Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's drawn you to something that you otherwise probably wouldn't.
Sure, but like Fantastic Mr. Fox is also excellent, and that's an animated movie. But Kena looks like a children's game.
Isn't Fantastic Mr. Fox a stop-motion movie?
Yeah, but my point stands. It's not real people. That's what I was trying to say. Anyway, to go off Saul's point, I just don't necessarily disagree, because I don't think adding interactivity makes something better. Like, I'll tell you right now, I think Red Dead is one of the worst video games I've ever played. But if it was a movie, it would probably be the best movie I've ever watched.
No, that's not.
It's a terrible game to play. There's not a single ounce of fun to be had playing Red Dead Redemption 2 outside of watching the story. And that's my point, is interactivity in that game sucks. But I would watch it on YouTube.
Well, and you know this weird thing too, and this is something I think about all the time with when games start doing this huge open world thing, right? Something that is kind of off of, you know, I didn't include it in the news for this because it's not really, it's more Xbox focused, but there was that Redfall leak. And they're talking about it being a world that's bigger than Breath of the Wild and Skyrim, and I'm like, that's too big. Yeah. And you run into the same problem that I feel like Red Dead 2 did, where you have to try and make that world feel believable. How do you do that? You make random events happen. And you know what? Like the first 3 or 4 times that you see some of these random events, like, you know, oh, a prisoner's hopping across the road, and if I take the shackles off of him, he'll do something, and that's interesting. But then the 8th time that happens in 4 hours, you're kind of like, okay, I get it. This is just one of many potential random things, and now you're ruining it, because my chances of having that happen twice in my life are already are incredibly low. Right. Let alone once.
I guess on a Red Dead tangent, is I care less about the random events, and I have a significant problem with the fact that I have to spend 15 minutes opening a drawer to get a quarter can of beef jerky. Like I that sucks.
Beef jerky didn't exist in Red Dead.
Okay, a quarter can of spitting tobacco.
Okay, hold on. You know Red Dead 2 to specify as well.
Yeah, Red Dead 1 is
happens
amazing.
before Red Dead.
So that's where the issue happens with you, is that the pacing slows down because of the way you have to interact with the world.
Right. I think I've told Brad, I don't know if I've told it on the podcast before, but I stopped playing that game because there is one mission where you have to wade through a swamp, and the wading takes like 10 minutes where you're just walking through the swamp, getting all of this exposition, and then I immediately got eaten by a goddamn alligator and had to do the entire walk again, and I deleted it immediately. Keep in mind, I spent $100 on that game, and I don't want to play it anymore. You know, that's where I think the we have to look at these things as individual things. Like, I think Kenna is a good example of something that should be broken out into movies, maybe even more than games, because you have an appeal of, well, I guess my 6-year-old wants to go see this thing with really big eyes and cute, you know, animals or whatever.
I also want to go see that, just to throw that in the ring.
Yes, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I do get your point. At least from a marketing standpoint, you have which arguably the same is true of Red Dead. I'm pretty sure people, well, actually maybe not. Maybe Red Dead's only as beloved as it is because there's not as much competition in the game.
Are you kidding me? If Red Dead came out right now, it would be distributed by A24, and a bunch of hipster Blake ass dudes would be jerking off to the thing.
Yeah, but which one's better? Which one's better to make
the
millions of dollars? Hold on, I'm talking about from a sheer money standpoint. Which one's better, to put it out as a game that's beloved and a pinnacle of its thing, or to put it out as an A24 movie that really won't make as much money as an actual full-on Hollywood
money wise? It's the game, but in terms of what again, we're talking about my opinions here, and I don't think playing that game is remotely fun. And I will tell you, I would rather watch it.
I even like the game enough and beat it, and I will agree with the majority. I think that game, as even a linear game where you're just going from place to place and it's taking you, would be so much better.
Yeah,
I do not care at all. If you want to have that big, crazy open world, do that on Red Dead Online and let the game just be a story that goes. Because I was so annoyed at having to ride my horse for 30 minutes in one direction to get to the next story quest because I didn't care about anything else happening because it was interesting. And that immersion with the world broke pretty quickly. Well, it would come back alive here and there, but
let's we got a little off topic.
We did get a lot off topic.
But yeah, like just to wrap up that part though, is I don't see why, you know, you have a game that's established like Kenna, and then you go and you want to make movies about that universe. Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong, but it's almost like the universe itself has to be detailed enough for that to be, you know, just for it to make sense. And like when Final Fantasy did with Brotherhood, that makes sense because that can be a very detailed world that can have a lot of lore and backstory to this story. But for me, Kenna, like from what we've seen of it, I don't know if like that can really be the thing. It just reminds me of when Avatar came out. The James Cameron Avatar. There was a book that came out like a month before it, and I forgot what it was called, but I bought it to read it, and it was like a prequel book. And I read through it. I'm like, this is like the movie. Like when I saw the movie, I'm like, I've read through this book, and this doesn't need to be a thing. It's just here for people to consume for like no reason. It doesn't add anything, and that's almost what I think these movies would be. Is that they would just be there to make money, like that. Like at that point. And typically when that happens, and if it's blatant to me, it automatically puts me off of the original source material too. Because it's like, well, did you make this with only that in mind of making money and stuff like that? Like I may have enjoyed my time with it, but at that point, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth and I won't return. And 9 times out of 10, when things become adaptations of each other, that's what happens. You end up getting this like, oh, well, this was just done for money. And solely for money. This wasn't done to like tell a different story in a different way. It's done for money. Yeah. And that's going
to be something time will tell more than anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get your worry. I think it's fair.
And that's why automatically when something like this happens, it's what I'm bringing up in the next part too, is that it's almost never worked out in its favor. Very few times has it. And I think the Final Fantasy universe has been the only real time that I've seen that it's happened. Because Advent Children and Brotherhood were phenomenal.
Or if you create something. So I'm going to go ahead and say the next news and then kind of get on that point. So the next piece of news is actually saying that rumors say that a new Twisted Metal game is in development, set to release alongside the Twisted Metal TV series that Sony has in the works, they've announced. And on the point of that, I think the big difference here, right, because Chris is actually, I don't know when he'll get around to it or if he will, but I know he bought it. we were talking about Quantum Break the other day when we were doing midweek. Quantum Break is a game that was built from the ground up with the intention of it being both a game that concurrently runs with a TV series that's in the game. So it's less that it's really two different things and more that it's two halves of a single piece of media. And that worked surprisingly well. And I remember I thought the game might be interesting, and I bought it back when it very first came out. But I was really worried about the TV part. I thought it was going to end up feeling off kilter and weird and disjointed and disconnected. And I was really surprised that it didn't. So it shows that, like you said, Saul, it can work, but it's more of how often does it really work in that favor, and how often should you pursue it if that's all it is. I hope that that's not the case here.
Well, go ahead, Chris.
Well, isn't this just an argument about quality of writing? Right,
to a degree,
because no, I mean
intention of writing too, right? Because if it's going to be a direct adaptation or not, I don't think taking Kenna and then making a direct adaptation movie makes sense. And I think it's also why Ratchet failed, because people who love Ratchet had no reason to go do it if they were like, wait, I can just watch the movie by playing the game.
Ratchet also failed because Sony didn't market it at all.
That is also true.
That is part of that problem, where it's a kind of a bad example because Sony never spoke about it. They just put it out. Yeah. But I guess this is where my disconnect with this kind of whole conversation comes in, right? Is because I've mentioned on the show before and on midweek that I'm writing a book, and my entire thing is like, I would love to make a game out of the war that happens before the book comes out. Mm-hmm. But nobody wants to play the book I'm writing. And that's two entirely different things that fit together very well. Like, I've always had the idea of a turn-based strategy game based on the war between humans and monsters that send the monsters into the underworld, right? You would want to play that, but believe it or not, I don't think you'd want to play the emotional drama of a parent losing his daughter and turning to violence and the rebels who have to fight against their forces. I think those are two different things that don't work in the same mediums. And I think that's the point, is like, if Saul is correct and these are just money grabs and there's low effort, fine. That makes sense. But if we're doing, okay, you're going to play Kenna, but then you're going to see a movie about how Kenna gets his powers, I don't want to play that, but I would like to see the movie. Whereas I want to play Kenna with her powers doing what she does. And I think that's the difference here, is like, yeah, this Uncharted movie looks like crap because it doesn't make any sense. And I might rather play the movie, but I think there's arguments for everything.
True. Well, and one's supplemental where one's not, right? I think both of the examples you gave were supplemental material, whereas like a good example of like Uncharted as a live action is that it's not supplemental. It's literally meant to just be a different, it's almost to replace Uncharted in a visual based standpoint only.
Well, and
I think your points are correct, Chris. But go ahead, Saul.
Well, I think that's the point of all of this too, right? Is that like, if it's not supplemental, then there is no point. And that's specifically involving video games. It's like, okay, with Ratchet and Clank, what was supplemental with the game compared to the movie? Nothing. Why would you watch the movie if you've already played the game? At that point, it's
vice versa.
Yeah, it's obsolete. Well, I mean, I would, even if I watched the movie, I could still see reason behind playing the game.
True.
But if you played the game, the film. You start the movie up and you're like, I've already seen all this. There's no point in me sitting on the couch for an hour and a half to watch it if I've already watched it. And I think that's the issue, is that like the way that the news was written, right, is that this may not involve the Kenna directly, but it may involve the world, which is fine. But at that point, like, if it's not going to directly tie in somehow, whether it's characters, something of the story, or the world itself that involved in, anything involving her powers or stuff like that, then what's the point of putting Kenna's name on it? If you can't tell it's Kenna without being told it's Kenna, then it's not Kenna. Right?
Oh, I don't think that's true.
I don't know for sure.
Well, that's the thing.
It depends on what the game ends up doing. I think it has a very specific visual style, and I think if they lean in the right way, they can find ways, because it's called Kenna Bridge of Spirits, right?
Right.
So if you go through and do maybe you can name it to where it's the Bridge of Spirits is something involved of there, but you don't have to necessarily be through Kenna.
Like it's a Song of Ice and Fire for Game of Thrones, but then there's all these stories that could be told within that universe that all just fit under the Song of Ice and Fire. Mm-hmm. Well, what I mean though is, like, how many movies has there been that did not start off as that movie, but then they ended up just rebranding it and it fits into that movie? And that's
Cloverfield did that, right?
It was, yes. And like, that's the thing, is that like, it wasn't intended, but it's like, this is so, it's just so cookie cutter that we could put any name on it and it fit in. And that sometimes that is the feeling I get when it comes to stuff like this, is that if you're going to separate the universe, do it well and do it connected well, don't just make like a random like 3D animated children's movie and say, oh, this is Kenna 2, that has nothing to do with Kenna at all. Or even the world or the characters. Just don't separate it and just say, hey, this is, because that's what I mean by money grab. If they throw Kenna's name on it or Bridge of Spirit's name on it and it's 100% separate, that has no tie-ins, then what's the point? What's the point of calling it?
I would have to imagine if you're keeping it in the universe, there would be tie-ins.
You would think so, but there's been times where this has happened before and they didn't, and there's not connections. They just call it a name, and they just like literally Cloverfield and stuff like that. There's been plenty of movies that were made and that were written all the way through, and then they were like, you know what, this could fit into this series. Here, let's just do that instead. And in reality, those movies tend to be dog trash. Like I have never seen a movie that I've liked where that was the case, where they just rebranded it in a sense. And like, that's the thing, is that like with Twisted Metal, typically like with tie-ins, like y'all brought up Quantum Break, this could be really, really well done, or this could be absolute dumpster fire. There is no in between to me. I don't think it's going to be mediocre. I think it's either going to be very bad or be very, very well done. And that just depends on how they frame the game. If they frame the game with like a lot of live action scenes and they try to make all the character models like actual people, like Twisted Metal to me is not about realism. So if they start making it realistic to a degree of like Death Race, I'm not going to like it. It's not going to be the same thing.
Yeah. And I think the Twisted Metal crux here is going to be really interesting to see how because this is more the inverse problem, right? This is, well, I guess it's actually exactly what you're talking about, taking a game and then turning into something else. But I think the difference between Kenna and Twisted Metal, right, is that Kenna is a little more character focused in the game. Twisted Metal, I have a hard time figuring out how you do this, because it's just a set of characters and lore that loosely attached to everybody to why they're doing what they're doing. And I like those. And they're fun as like little motivation as to figuring out why this person would go through the challenge of Calypso's, battles. But I'm not sure how that works in a TV fashion. It doesn't mean it's impossible. I hope it's good. But yeah, it's. I don't want to spend too much more time on it. But yeah, I mean, Chris, if you want to have one final remark, go ahead.
It'll be a 6-episode run. 5 episodes are about the characters, and then the 6th episode is the Twisted Metal battle, and that'll be the season. Book it. That's
probably all it can be, and I don't even know if more than one season's that worth it. Well,
they'll just kill off all but one, and then they'll have a mentor character in the first season who won the first one, and then he'll mentor, and then the guy who stands at the end will be another, and then they'll just keep doing it. It's not.
Now, it's clearly not impossible, because actually that sounds a lot like Twisted Metal 2013, which is something that people actually didn't like, at least from the game standpoint, because instead of having very short and far more vague storylines for each character, like the original games did, they had storylines for 3 characters, and they were far more involved than previous games had been, and they were completely different campaigns where you had completely different races and boss fights depending on what you were doing because of the character. So who knows? We'll see. But the bigger thing here for me is just that if this is the way we got to go about getting a new Twisted Metal game, at least that's happening. I just hope I hope it's not the inverse problem of where they're only making a Twisted Metal game because they want to have something to release with a movie, and so it's a cash grab. Even then, though, Twisted Metal is all about mechanics. As long as you get the mechanics right, everything's good.
Yeah, and as long as and I guess at the crux of it for me is like, as long as you produce something or write something or direct, or you have a passion project, as long as you started out with the intentions that it's connected to the world, and you write it within that same mindset and frame of mind, it should end up being at least somewhat decent. But the thing about it is, it's like it's rare we see that, and I hope that that's not the case, because like you said, Cloverfield coincidentally is a great example, because Cloverfield did this twice. The Cloverfield Paradox and 10 Cloverfield Lane. Those movies were not Cloverfield movies at all, but they just ended.
Which I will say this: you said that they've all been bad, right? I actually think 10 Cloverfield Lane's a fine movie. I think I really enjoyed it, even if they did not do the random scene at the end to try and tie it into the Cloverfield universe.
That's the thing, right? That's where it feels all of a sudden like, what was that? Like that to me. That's
where it loses it.
That's the thing. That's the quality change, and that's where you noticed it when they tried to fit it into something that didn't exist. And that's all I'm saying is that if they're making Twisted Metal, this TV show, in mind with the game to run in conjunction, or just to even be a sequel to the series or whatever, a prequel to the series, vice versa,
I think I got it. Actually, Chris gave it right. You use this to tell the character's story, and then you just let the game be pure gameplay. You don't even worry about the story in the game. The game is we could be finally getting a Twisted Metal battle royale, which I think makes way more sense than almost anything. And then leave it to where you can play as these characters, and you may be like, that guy's looking interesting. I wonder what his thing is. Well, check out this episode of this TV series. And you find it. But all right, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the next thing. PS Now September editions are here, and they are Tekken 7, Killing Floor 2, the original Final Fantasy 7, Windbound, Pathfinder, Kingmaker, and Moonlighter. And then on top of that, just so you're aware, 4 more Final Fantasy games will be added, technically 5, in the coming months, once per month, starting next month with Final Fantasy 8, the following month with 9. The following month after that will be 10 and 10-2 together in the remaster collection. And then lastly, 12's remaster, the Zodiac Age. Those are good additions. One thing I was a little curious about is whether or not we were ever going to actually hear something. And I'm a little curious as your guys' thoughts on this. If we were going to hear something either during the showcase or around it or even anytime soon about Jim Ryan's remark that he made roughly a year ago about how Sony is working on an answer, a solution. I can't remember the exact word, but some kind of competition for Game Pass. Well, and I'm still not sure what that is.
The funny thing is like, I was thinking this as you're reading off that list, and as I read it earlier, PlayStation Now and Games Pass share a ton of games.
They do.
So when people say like, "Oh, Games Pass is garbage," it's like you're calling PS Now garbage, like because it's a lot of the same games are shared there. But what's even more weird is they're following in Games Pass's footsteps because all of those games are already on Games Pass. All of those Final Fantasy
also
games.
True. They've been on there for way longer.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So for me, like for them to make a Games Pass killer or a competitor with PS Now, it's weird. Like they would have to do a PS Plus or something that includes PlayStation Plus and PS Now, just like Games Pass Ultimate includes Xbox Live, to be able to compete. But they'd also have to start putting out some of their first party games on it quickly, like quicker than what they have been.
Yeah, I always thought those remarks were weird because it seems like Sony is just dead set on not doing it, which I think is fine. There's no issue there. I just don't know what the point of him making that remark was, unless we're about to see something that still seems more in line with what PlayStation would do, but still does give you that feeling of like, this is how you compete with Game Pass. But it was just an odd remark because I feel like the answer should be when he was asked that, do you have any plans to compete with Game Pass? Our plan to compete with Game Pass is put games out on our system exclusively from our first party studios or partnering studios that you can't find anywhere else.
So Herman Hulse said.
Yeah,
that's what you think would be the answer. And Herman Hulse did say that. So what was Jim Ryan's remark about? Was it a weird way of saying that? And just not, I don't know. I'm very confused.
I don't know either. I hope, I desperately hope that we get something. I
don't desperately hope. It's kind of what we were talking about last week, and we're going to talk about a little bit on the community's take. I just think that they need to announce something and be consistent. I think what makes it so weird is that this feeling that they're in flux. If at the beginning of the thing, it was just doubling down on we believe in generations, and this is why you would want to play PlayStation, then bang, you got it. So I don't know. Time will tell if there's really an answer there, but the truth is that neither Nintendo or PlayStation have the funds to do something on a Game Pass level without bankrupting themselves.
Well, hold on. I think they do. Mainly because, okay.
It's a loss leader. It's basically the Epic Game Store thing, right? The only reason Epic can afford to do the Game Store is because Fortnite is a monstrosity, and they're using Fortnite's money to try and build up Epic Game Store to become what Steam is.
Well, see, here's what I wonder. Okay, imagine this: most first party games go on sale within the first 3 months now, right? Mm-hmm. By about a $20 discount. You could find most games at launch. This may be different on PlayStation 5. We don't have enough data yet to show, but like Days Gone, God of War, The Last of Us 2, those games dropped to $40 in a PlayStation sale within about 3 months of them coming out. So what I'm curious about is that if you create a service and you have it, you have to be a little more aggressive in the price than Xbox does, and in a business way, not a consumer way. So you link in PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus, and you charge $20 for it. But then that service, not PlayStation Now, but that service guarantees you all of PlayStation Now games. And after maybe 6 months of launch, every first party game.
Yeah.
Because if they're going on such a deep discount already, and it's not once, they go on deep discounts at least twice before the 6 month range.
Yeah.
Then if you could get people to subscribe to that at $20 a month, that wouldn't also just buy those games, right? Because they always make this thing of like, I would never personally have bought Fallout 4 on Xbox, but I just downloaded it on Games Pass because I have Games Pass Ultimate kind of thing. So like they technically got my money anyways via the Games Pass Ultimate subscription fee. But I wonder if there's data there that we would ever see that would make that, or to ask that question and see if it could make sense to the consumer.
Chris, curiosity of where you stand on this. So, because this is where I'm kind of coming, right? Saul, I don't think that your plan's bad. I actually think that there's a workable way for them to do that. And I think PS Now is kind of a very slow version of that because we are somewhat getting first party games onto it, like God of War.
Just very
like Horizon,
slow, yeah.
But it's more like a year or two later. Now, this is where I think what's going to happen is that regardless of what Sony does, unless Sony's doing day and date, I'm not even sure they need to try and go down that path, because if they do something that's getting closer to Game Pass but still aren't doing day and date, then people are still just going to complain and say it's not good enough, it's not day and date, we demand day and date. And then I think that you open the door for people to try and push towards the day and date, which may not be viable for Sony. And I think it may make more sense for Sony just to push back and say that's just not the business model that makes sense for us, and we're going to stick with this as our plan. I don't know. I get that, you're more postulating as to what could Jim Ryan be talking about? What was he really saying? But I genuinely don't know that there's a way for Sony to really compete with Game Pass without just saying, hey, we're going to do a service that has all of our first party titles day and date. And I don't think I don't think it's sustainable for him. I mean, I could be wrong. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. It's a hard question because I don't think PS Now is an equivalent to Game Pass, and I think people who look at it that way aren't really looking at what the thing is. It's a streaming system for the most part. I think the real competitor to Game Pass is PS Plus Collection, and I think all they need to do is just keep being like I've said it on the show before. You can go have Game Pass and your 500 games that you only want to play 30 of. We're going to give you 30 games you want to play. That's all they need to do. PS Plus Collection already comes with PlayStation or with PlayStation Plus. I'll pay extra money if you want to give me the day and date. You want me to pay $40 a month? Whatever. You give me God of War 2, you give me Horizon, you give me Wolverine, Spider-Man 2. It's all day and date there for $40 a month. Fine. That's what they need to do. I don't need them to be like, here's Funimation and here's Crunchyroll and here's our Sony movies day and date. Just tell me, okay, here it is, day and date, God of War, it's $40 a month. Or you want to just keep your subscription a year, year and 6 months, these games are up there, and that, fine. I don't need them to try and compete one-to-one with Game Pass. I don't think that's viable, and I don't think it's worth the time.
I don't think it's viable either. Now, something that you were kind of thinking that because I know Disney hasn't necessarily gotten a lot of good feedback from this, but thinking about Disney Plus and their way of doing movies that launch on the service day and date, but with a payment. So Mulan, I think, was an example of that,
yep. Black
where
Widow.
you had to, on day and date, you had to pay $30
nope, $30.
Rent it?
Nope.
Yep.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I think that's too much. That's not good enough now. But I think if there's a way for them to kind of meet in the middle of that idea and say, here's PS Plus Collection, and what will happen is that day and date, these games will hit PS Plus Collection for a discounted price. So you can spend on PS Plus Collection. You can buy the game for $30, and then you get all these other first parties that eventually get added full time. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. If you want to be a patient gamer and wait, there you go. But if you're also sub to this and you want to be able to be part of the conversation around gaming right now, because that's what you're into, then you have a path that still feels closer. How would you feel about that? It's not a very thought out plan, but just as a kind of interesting, quick thought.
I don't know. I mean, I don't see why Sony would do that if I'm thinking of it one-to-one. Like, there's no reason to charge me to rent your game.
Well, not a rent. You'd be buying it. That'd be the thing, is that you'd be getting a discounted price day and date. That way, not only are you paying for the service and they got your sub money there, but they're also getting some money for the game.
Yeah, I mean, that would be fine. I think that would be a good idea. But they do that. A lot of games get their PS Plus pre-order discounts.
Yeah, Fist saved me
Deathloop, if you hadn't heard, is 10% off on the PSN store. They've told you a bunch of times.
Yep. So and I pre-ordered it.
Yeah, they're doing it. I just don't. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think 10% is enough. That's in terms of if we're trying to get closer to that. I mean, as just a general, and in the spirit of the conversation about Game Pass, I think 10% is enough just as a benefit to PS Plus users. Yes, and I've always felt that way. I like the extra discounting on new games, including sale games. Seeing a game on sale for 50% off, and then being like, oh, if I'm a PS Plus user, I get 75% off. Sweet.
I don't know. I think. This is maybe it's a hot take, but I don't think we need a Game Pass on PlayStation. I think you're looking at two different things. And I saw a tweet yesterday that was kind of a perfect encapsulation of why I'm glad that these aren't like this. Is if you look at what Halo is becoming and you look at what Gears 5 is, those are storefronts, and they're storefronts because they're giving the games away for whatever it is, $14.99 a month or $1. So the games are storefronts, and if that's what we're going to turn PlayStation games into with a day and date thing, I don't want it. I'll pay my $70 and you leave me alone with your microtransactions.
To be clear, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
I have zero. Even if PlayStation had a Game Pass thing, because even Xbox, right? The only reason I have Xbox Game Pass is because it's overtly beneficial to me for the little bit of time that I want to play it. And I was also able to get 3 years for $100.
Exactly.
So there's no reason for me to have not done that. But in reality, Xbox didn't gain that much for me in that particular situation. I gamed them and they took a loss on it.
Exactly.
So I agree that Sony shouldn't do that. And that realistically, I don't want the games to become that either. I think that's the better way to go. So either way, we'll see what ends up happening there. Let's look at this next thing, though. Sony have announced the acquisition of Firesprite, the Liverpool-based studio behind PSVR titles The Playroom VR, Run Sackboy Run, and the horror game The Persistence. It looks like Sony here is doubling down on their follow-up to PSVR. That's still coming maybe sometime next year, a little unclear. Still no announcement, just while we're on that, of Bluepoint being acquired, which I really thought was coming soon, just because I'm still so perplexed by the PS Japan posting that whenever they bought Housemarque had the Bluepoint logo and Demon Souls into the slat from an official PlayStation account.
They'll announce it in December.
I don't know. Are they waiting to announce it when they reveal Bluepoint's next game? Maybe.
Yeah, of course.
But why didn't they do that with Housemarque? You think that Bluepoint's a bigger name for what they offer?
I think they bought Bluepoint off of Demon Souls, and I think they bought Housemarque off of Returnal. And there's not going to be a Housemarque game for another couple of years, and a Bluepoint game is ready to be
probably
announced.
Coming. Yeah.
It
depends on how big Bluepoint's
and to be fair,
what their sizes are.
To be fair, Housemarque did say that they were being courted. So Sony had to buy them when they did. Maybe they would.
Whereas Bluepoint have continuously expressed that they're fine being independent.
Yeah.
Which also makes me wonder, I mean, does that really mean Bluepoint will eventually do it? But why do you make that graphic if there's not some kind of discussion at least going on?
They own Bluepoint. If they hadn't had the Demon Souls in the background, I would be more willing to hear this. Oh, it was just an accident. I think it's just an accident is such a bad take, considering they have Demon Souls edited into there with Returnal,
Yeah.
It's not like they just swapped them out. Both of them are there. It was clearly meant to be.
Yeah. Like it was literally the alternate art specifically for that. I agree. It was a very odd setup, but so looking back at this Firesprite thing, I think this bodes well because one of the other things that we'll see when we go talking about the showcase is this idea that Insomniac is like the go-to studio right now for Sony. They're moving like crazy. They're doing so much. And I've always thought it was a smart buy because of how many teams Insomniac has. Yeah. And while we look at the main teams that are making these main games, there's also the reality that Insomniac has VR-specific teams that were making content prior to their purchase. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of potential for VR here. Now, Saul, I know that you've often said, like, PSVR you thought was cool, but it was still not quite where you wanted it to be able to think about jumping in. Is there a future with this PSVR 2, knowing kind of the few things we do with the different style headset and the controllers, where you might see yourself with the right games kind of coming into it a little with this gen with a little more enthusiasm?
It just depends on the pricing, the physical footprint it takes up.
Sure.
And it's just going to, I'll have to see it. There's absolutely no way I can make that call without knowing the full reveal and all of that.
Yeah. Well, the big thing I think is going to be a big game changer for it is going to be the no need for a camera. You don't have to deal with that problem that PSVR faced, and I'm sure Chris is very familiar with, where you're out of the range of the camera. And that there's nothing more deflating than having a really good time and then suddenly the game's like, bro, you're not even in the camera. What are you doing? Chris, I know Chris really likes VR on PS4. I remember.
Yeah.
And since you've gotten your PS5 and Sony refuses to send you the adapter that you ordered, I know you've kind of just just like, well, I can't do it anyway.
I've officially deleted all the PSVR games off of my hard drive. So
something that someone said the other day that I think could be interesting is that, and I don't know if y'all know this little tidbit. Apparently, when Project Morpheus was first starting off the ground and they were using the PS3i and the Move controllers they had like the eye with Move controllers strapped to a headset that was like the tracking for the head. They apparently made God of War 2, I think is what it was, VR, where they moved the camera right up to where you're Kratos' face. You could look down, you could see the hands move them and have the Blades of Chaos. And that was like their first test ground. Someone the other day, and I think it was in our Discord, it might have been Shafe Dog. I know he's a big VR fan. I can't remember. But they were talking about, it might have been Twitter, but they were talking about Wolverine and how Wolverine might be a good example of a game that if you really wanted to double in, and it's coming from Insomniac, who has VR experience, that could there be a way where they could kind of do the Resident Evil 7 thing where you just play the game fully in VR, even though I'm sure the normal version of Wolverine would stay third person. That would be kind of cool if it really could be that most of Sony's games moving forward, they could think about it like VR is going to be so integral to the system that almost every game we do will have a way to play it in VR that won't sacrifice the quality of the main game.
We have to see it in action. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're going to have much more robust tracking here, or at least it sounds like it. And that's kind of, to Saul's point, it's what we're being told on paper. And there's no way to tell if that's actually going to come, because as much as I love Mark Cerny, this is now the second console where we've been told stuff that's just not happening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that his intentions were well, and I'm sure at the time he thought it was going to be, but here we are still having it to where not even everybody can actually upgrade their memory yet. And games are still having to copy and patch stuff in when he was making it sound like they were going to end up having to being able to just on the fly take out the things that were no longer needed and put in the things that were needed without having to go out and rebuild a new compounded file. And I'm still seeing some games do that. Now, whether that's due to PlayStation's dev kit stuff not being robust enough and people not understanding it, so reverting back to that to get it done, or if it's that the system can't support it necessarily in the way that was intended, I'm unsure.
I think it's that every game is built on PS4, so they're still doing PS4
slave
stuff.
to the. Yeah, you're probably right. And that's not something we'll see for sure until we get PS5 only games.
Something I've noticed now with an Xbox Series X and a PS5 was I downloaded Borderlands yesterday, and it was like 68 gigabytes. It took 45 minutes to download that, which is also one of those that's like a PS4 game crossed into PS5 upgraded or whatever. Yep. It took 20 minutes to download 120 gigabyte Forza Horizon game.
Oh boy, I'm going to tell you right now, Saul.
Half the time.
I could tell you between me and Chris, that is the exact opposite of experience that I've had on every Xbox I've ever owned.
Is the Series S the same way for you?
Exactly the same.
Dude, It literally, like, I started. I can't actually look right now. I think my app can actually do it. So I started downloading both Dishonored 2 and Fallout 4 before we recorded, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to see if the app can actually tell me if it's done or not.
Well, I know one thing because I experienced it too. Chris got both the Xbox and the PS5 at launch, and I remember Chris saying like, "Whoa, the Xbox is really slow. And then he went to do PS5, and because me and him game share, I was looking like every 2 seconds there was a game popping off, finished installing, and it was big games like Spider-Man Remastered, Miles Morales.
So my question to Saul would be, not to sound like a dick, was it done or was it ready to play?
They're both done in this case. I will not start up a game when with either system when it says ready to play. I always let my games finish downloading entirely. I've had too many issues of like glitchy audio and frame rate drops when they say they're quote unquote ready to play.
Yeah.
I can't tell on my app, but on the app it shows that they're both in my library with no kind of download symbol. I don't know if they're supposed to, but like I could guarantee you that, like, at least from my experience, downloading those two games, if they're done, that is how long it took me to download Borderlands yesterday. And that's Fallout 4 and Dishonored 2.
You know Sea of Thieves, right? Whenever I went to go download Sea of Thieves on my Series S, whenever I hooked it back up, and when I went to download it back on my 1X for the little bit we were playing it, on the 1X, it took about an hour and a half.
Oh, no.
On my Series S, it took about 45, 50
I was going to say, it
minutes.
took about 30-ish minutes for me on my Series
And on
X.
my PS5, I downloaded... Oh boy, I downloaded whenever I first got it, because I was like, dang, Chris is right. I was downloading stuff left and right. I downloaded, or at least I said, okay, let me back up. I downloaded Spider-Man Ultimate because I ended up buying that one digital so Chris and I could both do it. I downloaded both Miles Morales and Spider-Man Remastered fully, not playable, in like 30 minutes. Both games bigger than Sea of Thieves. And it just kind of took me back. I was like, huh.
Is Miles Morales bigger than Sea of Thieves?
Those two games together definitely
are. Okay. I was going to say, because like,
it was,
Sea of Thieves, I was downloading
gigs. Both remastered, yeah. Because Spider-Man Remastered was like 45 gigs.
Spider-Man, I was going to say, Spider-Man Remastered, but you're comparing, they're both half the size of Sea of Thieves, except one's like a quarter of the size.
No, Miles Morales is also around 40, 50 gigs.
How is that game 40 to 50 gigs?
Because it's also a PS4 game.
Because it's also a PS4 game.
So you're downloading both copies?
And it's still smaller. No, it's just...
at the time, you definitely were, right?
Actually, yeah. Well...
No. Whenever I downloaded it, I selected PS5 and did not download the PS4 version. And I got it when the Legendary thing was out or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm, yeah. It's been a long time since then. Yeah, but also... Sea of Thieves, let me go look and see.
Because I could tell you my first trophy in Miles and tell you how far back that was. And like I 100% sure did not download both the console versions. 100% no, I did not do that.
I don't think
the only time I accidentally did that was with that first, Destiny 2.
I did,
and that was the game that taught me the lesson of like I need to select the things in there.
Okay, look, this is even worse. Sea of Thieves is only 17 gigs on Series S.
No, it is not.
45
no,
minutes.
It is not.
I'm looking at it right
Series
here.
S, it's not big at all.
Oh, but it is
on
128 gigs on Series X.
On Series X, it's 47.
No,
that's what it says right here.
What are you looking at?
This is as of last year. So unless they've added
of course they've. You just think about what they just added to the game.
I mean, okay, let me go find a new one.
All that stuff.
Here goes April 18th, 2021. That's
still
at least a more recent
still
one.
Not
I know, but I'm going to look and see if it's bigger.
Yeah, I was going to say
I'm looking on my computer right now. 68 gigs on PC.
Yeah. And and that doesn't have all the 4K. Well, it might actually have all the 4K textures.
It does. It 100% does. But actually, the console version's a little smaller because they know they're dedicated for SSD on the Series X version.
But
Series S and X.
I'm trying to figure.
But my point being is that I downloaded 2 games in less time than it took for me to download one that's actually smaller.
Yeah, for you though, you always have issues with your Xboxes. Like you were rubber banding at Sea of Thieves. I've never had that issue since I've been playing on Series X.
Every console I've ever had. I don't know why.
Because you hate them so loud that they're just like, we're not going to work for you. That's what they do.
Hate Xbox.
But yeah, like you,
I loathe them.
I never once have, because you said you were rubber banding in Sea of Thieves. That never once happened to me.
Yeah, happens like every 30
minutes. And you're
hardwired,
right?
No, not in there.
That might be why too. Is it you're doing wireless?
No other game on Xbox has ever done that.
Well, the Xbox wireless might suck.
Maybe. I'm comparing. Why would it only do it on? Here's the thing. I'm not blaming the Xbox. I actually think it's the game, but I don't know.
Because all my stuff is wired. So I'm just going.
Because every other online game I've ever played on Xbox has never done that. But either way, I think it's time now, boys, to go ahead and get into
Community's Take.
The Community's Take. And let me go grab all of those and get those pulled up. I should have had that pulled up beforehand. But you guys did the episode last week anyway, so why don't you kind of spearhead what the spirit of the community's take was while I get all of them pulled up?
Yeah, so for community's take, as we've changed the format, we asked you guys across our Discord, Twitter, and our Facebook group what your thoughts are on what the last episode's topic for 227, and that was, how did you feel about the way Sony handled the new upgrade path? Specifically, they used Horizon to be the one to spearhead it. And we asked you guys exactly what your thoughts were about it. And to be specific, we said, how do you feel about the upgrade path that Sony has implemented? Do you think it's a good middle ground, or do you believe there shouldn't be one? In regards to this, how do you feel about the way Sony has implemented change with Horizon specifically? Let us know. And on Discord, Patreon user and Discord buddy of ours, Rude Days 93, he says all upgrades should be free. PC has been doing it for years. Xbox and Ubisoft does it now, and many other studios who are much smaller than Sony as well. But a bigger point I want to make is that no cross-gen game should cost $70. My reason being, and correct me if I'm wrong, but more work goes into being put into the game for the work on an 8-year-old hardware. So why should consumers have to pay extra on the hardware that has also been said easier to develop games for? I understand that game prices have to go up eventually, but Sony and others should have either only made next-gen games $70 or gone ahead and raise the price of all games to $70, because it doesn't make any sense that one SKU costs more than another SKU when one SKU was easier to make. So how do y'all feel about that? Is that... To be fair, this is something I haven't actually paid attention to. Are cross-gen games actually $70?
No, on the PS4 version, for most of them, they're 60, and for the developers or publishers who already have gone up, it's 70 for the PS5 version.
Well, that's what I mean. So, like, if it's a game that's cross-gen I bought on PS5, it's $70.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I've bought a cross-gen.
For most of them. Again, that's also something that's depending on who the publisher is, because there's plenty of examples of games that are cross-gen that released bespoke PS5 versions, not just upgrades that is still $60.
Horizon's PS5 version is 70.
Yeah.
And the PS4
version is 60.
Which means, guess what? Buy the PS4 version. Don't be dumb.
Yeah.
So in this case, because of what they've done and honoring it, you're just going to get a game for $10 cheaper than you would have.
Right.
Now, to Rude Day's thing, this actually comes down to, it depends on how these games are being done. But one thing I want to say is that people say PC's been doing this for years about upgrades being free. Well, it really depends on the game, and that's kind of what goes on here, and it really still depends on the publisher, because there's times when games get remasters that are not free on PC, and then there's time where they do get remasters that are 100% free, and there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason for it. But I also think part of the reason for that is, if you're familiar enough to be doing PC gaming competently, you're also able to easily dip your toes into the heavily pirated market of PC gaming. And I think consoles are far less pirated, and so you can enforce your pricing a little bit better than you can on PC, where PC, Steam's, I don't know if you ever heard this from Gabe Newell. I don't know the exact quote, but basically it was like the only way to combat piracy is to basically give features and stuff that the pirates won't have. So the idea kind of there is to make it so easy, so simple, and then have features that lean toward the user, that they would be more inclined to just want to buy the game than to pirate it. And PC has a lot more fighting to do on that front than consoles do. And even then, consoles have that front. PSP had that problem. PS Vita now has that problem, which is probably why Sony was wanting to usher it in, because PS Vita has been it's pretty easy these days to just go in and hack your Vita and download whatever game you want without going to the storefront at all. So in that regard, I don't think that PC is going to be actually comparable enough here. I just think that they're two different markets. I don't think you can look at that. Well, but even then, I don't think PC's been consistent, and then they're always free. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. But if we go and look at like what Xbox is doing, yeah, there's an argument to be made for Xbox, but Xbox is also the company that's taking a loss leader position on spending millions of dollars to get games on Game Pass. So clearly they're not worried about charging this extra $10 for games, because right now they're using their PR swoon to hopefully get them to a point of sustainability. That's kind of where I'm at on this.
It's also not true that games on Xbox don't have upgrade fees. It's just Xbox games don't have upgrade fees.
Yeah,
I feel like the entire
yeah,
every game that has an upgrade fee hasn't on PlayStation, has one on Xbox.
He might,
as far as I'm concerned.
He might be specifically meaning first parties there, since he didn't specify. I'm not sure.
Yeah, he might be.
Well, even in the tenor of the conversation, I've heard that same thing of, well, smart delivery. And I'm like, smart delivery doesn't matter with Call of Duty. It's still the same situation. They may be handling their own games better, but keep in mind, Xbox has already said their games are done coming to Xbox One. Sony is the one who is still really talking about the old console. So that's why we even have this issue. Xbox is killing the issue before Sony is.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
Yeah. So they only have to do it for that 18-month period they said they were going to do it for, and we're rapidly approaching that 18-month mark. And they said that sentence, which gained them a bunch of PR, and most of the studios they bought that are about to start putting out this torrential downpour of games are not going to be releasing until after the 18-month mark has passed. So it almost becomes a non-issue.
Well, what's even more funny is that if they would have actually held up to their guns, this would have been a non-issue to begin with, because generations.
Yeah, that's also true.
With this has also kind of all been thrown together, not poorly, but now it's more concise and more consistent. But before, this whole Horizon thing, the last 2 weeks, this was all like them winging it, literally, because 6 months ago this wasn't supposed to be the cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that we haven't quite touched on in his thing, though, that I do think is there's two interesting things here that we didn't touch on really yet. Because of how development's being handled, I don't actually know if more work is having to go into making these games work on PS4, or if the games are being made 100% for PS4 and then using the extra horsepower of the PS5 to push it further. I would be inclined to believe it's the latter.
Yeah, that's not something I know anything about. I would think so.
But we don't know because we're not familiar with the development process.
For me, I kind of, and I'm sure this doesn't surprise anyone, I kind of disagree with almost everything he's saying. But like specifically that, to me, is like the game is $60 on PS4 because it's been an entire generation of PS4 games being $60. That is the price for PS4 games. And you're not going to, at the end of the generation, raise the price arbitrarily. Prices on PS5 are $69.99. That is why it's $69.99. It's Sony trying to
believe
Sony and other company. Well, they're trying to set a standard, and the standard on PS5 is 70. The standard on PS4 is 60. So why would they charge you 70 on PS5 to keep it consistent? Yeah. And why would they charge you 60 on PS4? You know what I'm trying to say. I switched them around.
I don't completely disagree with his thoughts on that, though. Realistically, if Sony were to come out and say, listen, we're still going to support PS4 with Horizon, Gran Turismo, and God of War. Yeah. But because they're $70 games on PS5, by opening it up enough and giving you the ability to still play it on old hardware, if you've chosen not to come up yet, you will pay a premium. I don't think that would actually be that crazy. I still agree with you that in the spirit of looking at generations, a good time to go about pushing price up is with a new generation. And actually a good example of that, I think, was throughout the PS3 time, because if I'm not mistaken, God of War 2, this is not a mistaken part, God of War 2 is a PS2 game. Mm-hmm. And it came out after the PS3 was already out, and PS3 had rose the price from $50 for a new game to $60. So MotorStorm and all these games were $60. God of War came out after the fact on PS2 and still kept its $50 price point, despite the fact that it came out when games had moved to a $60 price point. So in that spirit, I think that this has kind of got a precedent for it. And I think Sony's used generations as a way to do something. And whether or not it's altruistic, because clearly it's not. Sony knows that they have the benefit of some of these other companies who've been wanting to figure out a way to raise the prices. So if Sony goes, hey, we're going to be the ones that kind of pull the plug and just, we're going to do it. We're going to rip the Band-Aid off and we're going to go 70. And now everybody else gets to go, okay, now we're going to also start being 70. I don't think that has to be a bad thing. No, but I also think it continues to be that Game Pass muddies the waters of this conversation because of people wanting stuff for one monthly fee. And I'm not saying they're wrong to do so. I just think that they're different conversations.
Yeah. It's also a weird kind of point in general, because if you pay $70 for Horizon, you're just not paying attention, like that's really what it is. And if you're not paying, you're paying $60 for the PS4 version of Gran Turismo, but you still have to pay $10 more for the PS4 to get the PS5 version, the dual entitlement or whatever it is. So there really is no kind of different prices here, I guess.
Well, and
in terms of getting something for free.
Yeah. And to, at least for me to close off on his statement too, is that it's like what I said last week, is that when you become a digital gamer, you are very aware of that this game may be gone in 10 years from your library. You know, you are very much aware of the downsides to being all digital.
Hopefully you
are. Yeah. And that's the same that goes with being a console gamer, is that you are very aware that when new games come out, because this has always been the thing too, is that there could be price increases that go across the board. Look at every generation Nintendo's ever done. It's been a $10 price increase for the most part. And if not a $10, then a $5 price increase. And you are very much aware that games will eventually become more expensive with the more powerful they get. It's the same of that when you go into PC of, I can play Overwatch at 1080p at 60 frames per second with this graphics card. And if I upgrade my graphics card, I can now play it at 4K 60 at no additional cost. It's a benefit that is all gets weighed out when you make these choices. Now,
yeah. So to clarify there, that's the difference for Rude Day's statement, right? That's not the PC giving you an upgrade for free. That's the PC version of the game being initially programmed to be able to support something you may do in the future.
Right.
So if you buy a game right now and you really only run a 1080p monitor and you have a very good 1080p graphics card, the game still supports 4K. So just because you later go off and buy a 4K monitor and buy a 4K GPU does not mean that because now you can actually flick the game over into 4K that the game has done anything. No work had to be done because that was in the initial workload.
And to be fair, we don't know if that's like that for games that are on console. We don't know if a developer can flip a switch and make it, upgradable or run better.
That's what Xbox is going for. They wanted to have scalability that PC offers, basically just built into the consoles.
Right. But to finish off with his statement, he goes on to answer the question again, or answer the second part of the question, and he says, as far as how Sony handled Horizon, good for going back on what you already said previously, I guess, but you never should have put yourself in that position to begin with. That's just bad PR. That's absolutely right. I think we could all agree on that with the way that they came out is with the whole generations thing, and then now having to kind of go back on that because of that initial statement and because of the initial statement that was made about upgrade paths, it is bad PR. But I think that bad PR doesn't mean anything in the long run. I think it's just going to be something people will forget about.
It's a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And as much as we're all talking about it right now, and actually, I'd even argue that if we weren't doing the community's take right now, because of Sony's showcase, this would already be a moot point. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds bad, but that's really the consumer mindset for the most part is not because, and I know because I'm one of the people of you have so much going on in your life and so much more to worry about that you just you're like, you know what? Here I am upset about this one thing for this time period, which they've gone back and fixed. And now since they've done that, and we have this cool showcase where they showed, hey, even though we did that last week, this week we did this. What do you think of all this cool stuff? Your consumer side that's just excited to have something new coming kind of washes that old thing out. It happens in all sorts of things. Sometimes it doesn't, and you get lucky, like when Final Fantasy 11 Online pretty much ended up, or not 11, 14 had to go all the way back to the developing situation to come back and be a big, great game. But that's not always the case.
Yeah. The Snow Jedi on Discord, Jason, he says, depending on the level of work done in the upgrade, I don't have an issue paying a small upgrade fee. I wouldn't be buying a PS4 title now and upgrading though, which that's also a thing that people you could put yourself in if you want to, is that if you plan on getting in PS5, you can buy the game and play it now on PlayStation 4, knowing you're going to upgrade it later, or you could just wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it gets into the almost the muddy waters of you kind of put yourself in this situation. So you don't really have right to criticize or complain. Right. So
I have a question. I'd be curious to hear you guys take quick that's on this, and then the community can answer if they want. If Sony said PS5 version is $79 or $69.99, comes with the PS4 version, you buy that, you get the PS4 version. But they said the PS4 version is $59.99 and you do not get the PS5 version. Is that fine? That seems completely reasonable to me.
It does.
It's more reasonable than what they had. I do agree there.
It is kind of what they have, right? You buy this version.
No, it was 80. It was 80. It was actually more than a normal PS4, PS5 game. It was 80. That's why I think my initial thing was, why would you even go that next level up? If they said that dual entitlement, well, okay, good example is, I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, because you may have actually bought it, or both of you might have, I don't know. You were talking about other developers who have done things that aren't smart delivery based. And one of those examples, if I'm not mistaken, is Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War.
Yep.
Whenever that game came out, the way that they went about doing it is that if you wanted to be able to have the next gen upgrade in it, you spent $10 more and basically had to buy the PS5 version.
Yes.
And it gave you both, which I do think is a closer answer. I still prefer, personally, if there's a way to buy the game for the normal base $50 price or $59 price, and then come later, 4 years later, whatever it be, and go, you know what? I do want to play the PS5 version of that game. Let me throw a quick $10 at it. Now, Chris, to your point, I get that that's not the most, like, I think if their initial answer would have been you buy the PS5 version and basically you get both, I don't think that the outcry would have been as much as it was, except for the statement about it being a free upgrade. I think that muddied the waters a lot too.
Well, and I think having both options on the table is open, because sometimes, let's say you have a PS4, right? And you're kind of a casual gamer and you buy Call of Duty, Vanguard on PlayStation 4, because you don't ever have an intention of getting a PS5. Well, maybe that changes in 2 years and you get a PS5 and you're like, I kind of want to go back and play Call of Duty Vanguard's campaign. Lord knows why. But they offer a $10 upgrade to be able to do so on your PlayStation 5 at 4K, 60 or whatever, all the bells and whistles. It gives you that option of like, I guess at this point I'll pay $10, which technically in this situation is way outdated. But I think that with what Chris said, though, if they offered both versions of the game at $70, that would be phenomenal, just because let's say I have a PlayStation 5, or I do have a PlayStation 5 sitting right here, right? And let's say I get Horizon right here and I'm playing it. And let's say if I want to go in the living room and hang out with the wife and I want to play it in there on the PlayStation 4, I own both copies. Because technically right now, if Demon's Souls was to have come out, or any other PS5 game that's also cross-gen right now, if I bought the PS5 version, I don't own the PS4 version, right?
Yeah. So, no, you don't.
In those weird scenarios where it's like you might want them in different systems or something, because some people have weird setups where they do that kind of stuff at.
Yeah. So to Chris's point, that was what made it interesting, is that if you were a PS5 owner who wanted to play on PS4, which again, there's very few situations as to where I think you would really want to do that. But then let's say that there is one that does. I thought the weird thing about that was that I expected the solution, Chris, to be you buy the PS5 version. And then when I saw that it was instead that if you want to be, even if you own PS5 and want the flexibility to play on a PS4, you have to spend $10 more, $80. I thought that just sounded odd.
I don't know, man. We don't have to go on too much about this. I just don't understand the logic of I deserve a different version of the game because I bought a different version of the game already. I understand it in terms of like, this makes me feel warm and fuzzy, but like when I just look at it, I don't understand how people are like, I'm owed this. It doesn't.
Okay, Chris, can I give you something that kind of makes a little more sense as to where I'm coming from, at least in it? And it might make more sense to you. Is a good example here is that this is a game that's being developed realistically with one team and then a small group that's looking at pushing the PS5 side of it. That's why I think this small team and what they're doing over here to push the PS5 things, the $10 should be going towards funding that part of the game, is the way I feel. Now, there are times, this is a really old example, so just follow me for a second.
I'm here.
The Star Wars The Force Unleashed is a game that came out at a point in time where they wanted to put those games out on every platform that they could. So that game came out on PS2, came out on 360, came out on PS3, it came out on PSP, and I think it came out on Wii. And here's the different thing about all those, is that those weren't all individual ports. Instead, what actually happened is that the PS2 version was a completely bespoke version developed from the ground up, and just looking at their story and stuff, that actually had a few different mechanics and limitations that just couldn't do that the PS3 could. Okay. PSP version was the same. It was a bespoke version of its own that leaned into more of what the PSP could do. The 360 and PS3 version were the same games, just ported to two consoles.
Sure.
So if, in that console situation, if I was saying, well, I bought the PS3 version, why don't I get the PSP version? I think it's a harder thing thing to go right there, because it was a completely different developed team making a game from the ground up for a completely different architecture.
Okay, so then I fair. So then why aren't you entitled to the PC and Xbox version of a cross-gen game? What's the difference?
Also, that's a fair argument. Yeah,
it doesn't. You're not entitled to a different version of the game.
Do you really know the answer to that? Because
they're different. They're different. They're different.
Well, yes, but really the answer to that is because there's no way that Steam or whatever PC store it's on and Xbox would want that, because now you don't got to go buy and they don't get their piece of the pie. That's really what it is. But when Sony's already getting your piece of the pie in this particular example, and then getting a little bit more with that $10 fee down the line, I think that's what makes it a moot point. They're already getting their dish. It's their game to begin with.
It's
and
not
they're selling it on their service,
because we're mad at a publisher for making a decision as a publisher, when the publisher of Tales, when Namco Bandai could give me a code for each version of the game because I bought the PS5 version. They're not doing it. It's the same argument.
They're not doing it because the platform holders legitimately wouldn't let them.
Right.
So I guess your argument here is that Sony won't let themselves do something that doesn't really matter. You know, if anything, if they get a chance at getting a $10 upgrade later. Whereas if I bought the PS4 version today, and like Saul was saying, 5 years from now, you're like, let me play Call of Duty Vanguard for whatever reason, or let's actually use Horizon. Let's keep on the same game.
Yeah.
I want to play this game on PS5 5 years from now because I just want to. The chances of me doing that, because I get to spend $10 to do that, versus me having to go, wait, I got to go buy the game again for PS5 for $50, I just wouldn't do it.
Right.
So it's more likely they're going to get more of my money if they give me a $10 upgrade pass.
Sure. I guess, I don't know. It's like when you and Blake had this conversation, I kept having to feel like I needed to say that, like, I'm not trying to like suck Sony's dick or be a bootlicker or whatever. But I think when we have these conversations, there's a certain level of, you need to think as and I understand being upset and like, okay, this sucks, but acting like you're entitled to another version of a game is what sets you up for failure. And I know we'll have the same conversation when we talk about the showcase, because I have a feeling already about the way the conversation goes, because it's the tenor of everything else. And we have to start looking at this stuff as, these companies don't work for me. I have to accept this stuff. And you have to accept that the PS5 SKU is different than the PS4 SKU. Even if it was one dude running on a hamster wheel that happened to get it going, it's a different version. And until we as gamers start accepting that these companies are not doing things to help us, we're going to keep getting upset about stupid stuff like the versions cost different. And they're different versions. And it's nice that they offer an upgrade fee, but I don't even think a $20 upgrade fee is unreasonable for a brand new game, which is the difference between Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut or Death Stranding Director's Cut. Those are old games.
So I'm going to move over to Twitter to answer some more. But to close out with what Chris is saying, Brett, is very similar to what we and him said last week, is you have to set expectations to what you're doing. And as long as those expectations are set, you end up having nobody to blame but yourself if those expectations go wrong. And I think at the end of the day, it's, if you think you're going to get a $70 game for the price of a $60 game and vice versa with no issues, and you think that because of that if I buy a PlayStation, then I'm going to get this and this and this, or if I buy this on PlayStation 4, I'm going to get this for free. If you start thinking that, you're more likely to be upset. That doesn't mean that you can't have the opinion that you don't like it, but it's at that point, it's about being upset.
Yeah. And just to clarify too on all this, right? I'm not upset. I'm buying the PS5 version. This literally doesn't
affect me either. I'm not upset at either.
So from looking at this, Chris, I would even argue this isn't me being upset. I'm actually not upset about it at all. What I'm looking at it is kind of what I talked about too, where this kind of goes back to the idea of the pricing behind Skyrim, right? And that you look at what the industry as a whole does, and to some degree, you are informed by the industry. And that's why you had a good example with Call of Duty, where you may know the answer to this. I'm not sure.
It's a $10 upgrade fee. The $69.99 gets you both.
Okay, I know that, but that's only at first. If you buy Call of Duty on PS4, just the $60 version, can you later spend $10 to go up to the other one?
I don't think so, because I had a PS4 version I borrowed from my brother and didn't play it because of that.
Okay, so that shows an example of kind of like Skyrim, where there are people in the industry doing that, but there's also people in the industry contextually doing the same thing. So I'm looking at it from a business standpoint too, and that's why I even offered the thing of, I think that you have a higher chance of getting more money down the line from people who want to double dip their toes in, from saying you can double dip for $10 that we're far more likely to get from you than you can double dip for $40, $70, whatever it is. So I would argue, sometimes there are things that I'm just personally upset about. Like, right, I was personally upset that RuneScape JGX denied initially, less than a week ago, an HD patch or an HD version that ran on top of their client that followed all of their current guidelines and that they knew about for 2 years. Suddenly shut it down the day it was supposed to release. I went and I canceled my sub, went and did the riot that we were doing, or the protest and Fally in the game, and they went back on it. That's awesome. I was upset about that. But I understand at the end of the day, they're looking at business decisions. I just didn't agree with the way they went about showing those business decisions, of waiting for 2 years of someone spending 2,000 hours developing something and then saying, no, you can't do it, even though they were intimately aware of it. Now, in this situation, this is more of me just looking and saying, I think the business way, kind of like I told you there, is that you're actually going to garner more business and be able to do things that are going to keep you in better place with people, while still being more likely to get people to double dip and get more money out of them. If you play this game of chess, not of setting expectations, but playing into sort of what the industry's doing while also dominating your own stuff here. So you can dominate with Horizon as a big game and get it coming out. You can also end up offering this $10 pass so that people like you and are more willing to stay loyal to you, so that down the line they keep continuing to buy your stuff. So I think it's, like I mentioned to you, it's a short-term gain versus a long-term gain thing. And there's got to be a blend of those. I don't think it should just be one or the other.
Okay, so we'll move on to Twitter now. We have 3 on Twitter, and they're all, actually 2 of them are pretty similar. Stuntman Blake, aka Hipster Blake, as Chris called him earlier. He says $10 is absolutely fair. Of course, it would be nice if they took the Xbox approach and just included it, but $10 is worth the upgrades, in my opinion. Glad they course corrected their major frick up. This is a PG podcast. Will Rodriguez,
not for Chris.
Will Rodriguez also says $10 for an upgrade is fair. The way I see it is that if I buy a game on PlayStation 4, I should be able to upgrade for $10 whenever I decide to. I shouldn't have to buy the game twice. And then the third and final comment is most in line with, I think, all 3 of us, is all I ever cared. Oh, this is Shafe Dog too. Another one of our Discord buddies and Twitter pals. He says, all I ever cared about was them picking one method and just being consistent. I don't care if I have to pay, though it doesn't really affect me since I no longer have a PS4. I think we all have PS4s, but we all have PS5s, is what I mean by that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think that the through line, at least I know for the majority of us, is consistency. I don't know. Chris doesn't seem to care as much about the consistency, which is fair if you don't. But I think most people exist in that standpoint of, pick a lane and follow it.
Yeah.
I think that's what most people want.
I think in this example specifically, I don't care about the inconsistencies because they told you up front. It's not like they waited until launch and were like, oh, haha. It's like they told you 4 months or however many. I can't do math early. I will say this is the only thing I want to say on this topic, and then we can move on. I find the argument that 5 years down the line, I should be able to go spend $10 on a different version of the game absolutely abhorrently ridiculous. That is 5 years down the line. If you were going to tell me you have a 6 month or even a year window for this to be valid, fine. 5 years down the line is ridiculous.
Oh yeah, that's even better. So the 5 years was just showing.
That is an entire console generation. And you want to sit here and tell me I bought the PS4 version 5 years ago and now I want to upgrade? What? That is a terrible argument. That is a straw man, and it does not work. That is insane.
So I don't think it's a straw man. That was just
it was the wrong word. I couldn't think of the right word for it.
So I will say that, if their solution was you have a 12-month or a 24-month window to activate this $10 upgrade fee and then you forfeit it, fine. But it was more of, even then, right? Let's even go the 5-year argument from a business standpoint while Saul's gone. Let's look at this from...
Yeah, he's not enjoying this one.
Looking at this from a standpoint of, even 5 years, hey, it's Eevee.
Hey, Cat.
Yeah, looking at this from the standpoint of 5 years down, people who already bought this game, here we are. All right. Would I rather 5 years down make $10 from 1 million people? Or let's put whatever number on it. $10 from 20,000 people who want to suddenly upgrade their thing that year and get that money out of them, or make zero money from them because now 5 years later they might want to replay it and they go, I got to pay $40 to replay it and I'm good.
Sure.
That's zero money down the road, or a little bit of 10. So that's why I say, again, from a business decision, I actually think giving people the ability to spend more money towards you easier is only going to get you more money spent easier. Yeah. It's basically that idea of the cheap things they put at the checkout line of like, but look at this. They could literally be buying anything. And I would even be, if I was a PlayStation, I'd have it to like when you're in your checkout, it'd be like, we noticed that you have Horizon Zero Dawn, but you've only got the PS4 version and our system shows you're on PS5. If you want to spend $10, you can bump that up real quick to a PS5 version. Dude, get that extra sale, upsell.
5,000 people spending $70 is more valuable than 20,000 spending 10. Anyway,
that's assuming that 5,000 do it. But yeah, it's a bunch of assumptions, you know.
Yes. Let's just
so let's go real quick because we got none off of Facebook. I want to show them a little love. Josh Ayers, one of our patrons, he says, I don't care about upgrade paths. I use them now only for trophies. So whatever a game is good enough, I'd buy it twice without a second thought if it's a good enough game.
Facts.
So it goes after you here. Going to do one more real quick. Let's see. Donovan Williams. He says, I think they should have a standard charge across the board or leave it to the individual studio. So the responsibility just isn't even on Sony. Although that would imply that first-party studios would have to decide their own pricing, which I don't know they would be okay with. That would be interesting. If Sony's own internal studios are like, our game on PS4 is $60 with a $10 upgrade fee, and the others are like, nah, we just say no.
I looked away at adjusting my volume, and I looked back and Chris got kidnapped from his sex dungeon.
Yeah, Chris did get kidnapped from his sex dungeon. It's okay though, because if you get kidnapped in a sex dungeon, it can only be for good things, right?
You would hope so. Well, yeah. Anyways, we could go ahead and move into the main topic of the show, which of course everybody should know at this point is the September 9th Sony showcase, PlayStation showcase we had. I keep calling it a Sony showcase. But and it's probably...
You didn't know Sony's all PlayStation these days?
I mean, are we wrong? Like TVs and
that's not that wrong.
And cameras is and audio.
Yeah. And the majority of their money still comes in from PlayStation. Yeah. The overwhelming majority. So to Chris's point, wanting to make sure that you're making as much money as you can from your cash cow, you might as well do
the thing about Sony too, though, is it seems that everything they do business in, cameras, audio, and consoles on top of TVs, they're almost always fantastic in all regards. I can't speak for TVs, but like their cameras are really, really good, and their audio is really, really good. Like, and their consoles obviously work really well. So,
yeah, I got you. Well, look, we're going to do basically a quick recap and kind of touch base on all the things that we did and or didn't care about or didn't like at all from the showcase. So kind of a quick go through each one, I think in order of how it happened. The first thing that the showcase started off with was Star Wars KOTOR remake in terms of a real announcement. How you guys feeling about
Loved
that?
It.
Hell yeah, brother.
I am super pumped.
So this one's interesting. It's from Aspyr, who's our Aspire, whatever, who's been making a bunch of these games coming over, and of course Lucasfilm Games. The weird thing is EA did the original one, but they seem to have zero involvement here, which is not a bad thing. Couple of things. It is PS5 console exclusive at launch, so it will come to PC, but it will be console exclusive for some set amount of time. Not clear. No release window was given, so this is probably a lot like Dead Space Remake, where we're seeing something announced at a pretty early stage. I'm excited for it. My hope in the long run is that they find ways to take what makes KOTOR great, which is its story and its characters and its RPG mechanics specifically, and change the things that make that game a slog to play today, because they just are.
Yeah, they are. I've tried replaying it on Xbox and PC, and I'm one of those people that I actually like the second one a little bit better than the first one.
I do too. I do too.
But yeah, that game is just it's so weirdly controlled to what I'm used to now. It's kind of like what Liam said about third-person action games. It's hard to play. But I am heavily looking forward to it.
Third-person action has come so far. Yeah, I know Chris was talking about it would be really cool if they could get to a point, and it sounds like it's where they're going to go, more action kind of looking at a way to up the speed of the gameplay because it's very slow. But that looks awesome. I think it's a big get. One of the through lines I think you'll see in this is that when it's a partnership from Sony, it looks like it's always Sony finding a way to supplement where they lack in their own first party. So their first party right now, be it because of Sony's thumb, I really doubt it is, being like, no, you can only make action, third person action adventure games. It looks like they're coming down and that's what their first parties want to do. Great. We're going to go out and we're going to spend some money to make sure we get a Western RPG exclusive for some period of time. Next game shown was Project Eve, which is from a developer called Shift Up. This game was apparently revealed like 2019, 2020 at some point. It's an action game, maybe an RPG. It looks like it's more action oriented. Originally announced multiplat, so even though it was shown with a focus on PlayStation, it's probably still going to be multiplat. No release window on that either. Chris, how'd you like that one?
I really liked it when I thought it was a Parasite Eve game.
yeah, I love that in the Discord you were like, cool to see Parasite Eve coming back, just to completely back up. Here's the thing, I thought so too, but I thought not seeing Square ahead of it was weird. But then when it said that the studio, it wasn't Shift Up, but it was some other thing where it was like Eve something, I was like, Parasite Eve?
Well, like, I also got hyped because I think like 5 minutes before that I had put in the Discord that I hoped Parasite Eve was coming back as a joke. And then the second game was called Project Eve. And I was like, oh, I'm so sick. I am the best. And then, of course, it still looks good. I'm excited for it. But
yeah, and this actually, the thing that's interesting about that is that kind of speaks to what people have talked about where Square have gotten to a point where I think Saul and I talked about this at work the other day. Square are kind of at a point where most of their games are a little samey right now. Doesn't mean anything bad, but I think people want Square to get back to that point of where they were when it was still Squaresoft, when you had weird games like Parasite Eve coming from them,
absolutely. This game looks phenomenal though.
It does.
This looks like,
really cool.
Like everybody keeps saying Devil May Cry and Nier, and that's just because everybody simultaneously thought that at the exact same time.
Yeah. Well, I thought Nier, not only from the world and the weird voiceover that was kind of like, like, okay, whatever this, and then suddenly the music flared up, and I was like, bro, that's kind of Nier vibes. What's going on? They hit the
nail on the head. I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's a very overly sexual female character fighting this weird space alien. This is kind of Nier.
Yeah, well, you get those Bayonetta vibes too, right? So I think what it was Platinum Games came to mind, even though it's not Platinum.
Well, then it like focused onto the world, and the world was like kind of run down like Nier, and I'm like, that kind of does look like Nier, and then the music, I'm like, this game looks amazing.
Yeah. Next thing up, I think they showed was Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which I think is a spin-off standalone game coming from Gearbox. Of course, it's a Borderlands spin-off if you don't know who Tiny Tina is. I asked Chris, because I knew this game had been talked about, but this is the first I saw it. So in the chat, I was like, so Borderlands basically as a D&D campaign, and that's exactly what it is.
It's entirely,
So I will say, I am far more drawn to the style of this than I normally am of Borderlands because of all the high fantasy stuff that's kind of being mixed in with it. I don't know if I'm gonna play it yet or not. It's coming March of next year, I think is what it was. So that's going to be really interesting to see. I think it looks cool. Chris had mentioned that it matches kind of what they did with Borderlands 2 DLC.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but it's DLC.
Borderlands 2 DLC.
Tiny Tina's Wonderland.
I don't think I ever played that.
It's good. That's probably the only DLC I enjoyed from them, personally.
The only one.
Well, and see, this trailer excited me so much because Borderlands has a really good knack with inside jokes, and not only inside jokes, but like Easter eggs with these inside jokes. So, like playing Borderlands 3 yesterday, within the first 10 minutes, I caught a Dark Knight reference. Like, and I knew that's where it's from because of the way it was said. And honestly, if this is true, like D&D, like there's, true D&D monsters and lore in this, that's going to be really cool because they're going to do it really well done, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope so.
It looks cool.
I don't know. I fell off of Borderlands 3 so hard that I'm really hesitant to want to be like, this looks cool, let me play it. But I also don't want to be jaded to Borderlands as a whole just because I haven't really cared much for the last two. So we'll see. Next thing up, though, we finally got to see a real in-depth look at Forspoken, which honestly surprised me. So that's Square Enix, of course, action RPG coming out of them. PS5 console exclusive, if for some reason you didn't know, originally started as Project Athia and is coming spring 22. Now, what caught me here is I didn't expect from all the things they showed for it to be taking place both in, I think it was New York City.
Yeah.
And then this fantasy world of Athia. And it sounds like the game is going to actually take place between both of them. So it's like she's going to be going in and out of them. That's going to be interesting. I don't know how I feel about it as a whole because there's more to be seen. But I've gone from being like F Square for showing Project Athia because I don't trust them to this sounds interesting and has a name. So hopefully that bodes well to now seeing it as a pretty good thing. I hope this is not Square doing what they did with some of their other games where they show, and then go dead silent and act like it's coming soon and then it doesn't.
Yeah.
If this really does hit spring 2022, Square will be one step closer towards redeeming
It's
themselves.
absolutely not going to. But I'm gonna give this a May date. It's gonna be spring, and they're gonna announce March, and then it's gonna get I'm gonna announce April, and it's gonna get pushed to July. I'm gonna call it now.
Okay.
Look, if it comes out in the first half of next year, that's pretty amazing. That's 18 months from being shown
as
to being
project.
released.
That's what.
And
that's why I technically rounded up, put it in the second half of the year.
And even then, I would argue if it comes out within realistically a year, more or less, of the console coming out and really being out and about, that's pretty good because it being shown as early as it did was partially because it's part of a new console generation. We do want to show stuff that's coming, so you get a little more months of window out of there. But yeah, if it can come out 18 months from start of the thing, that's pretty good.
I do have one thing.
Get out of here.
I do have.
I guess I didn't. Sorry, got invaded, boys.
Oh no,
we're good though.
I think the only thing I took away from this game is that the writing seems awful, and that looking at this game and looking at God of War, if you don't think God of War is being held back by being on PS4, go watch the trailers again.
Yeah, the writing is not the greatest, and it definitely does not look like a next generation game, except in the environments.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think if you compare the two.
Yeah, I think character models did a little work, but the environment is gorgeous. Holy crap. And the draw, which here's the thing, Lumina is a pretty engine. There are parts of Final Fantasy 15 that are really pretty.
There is. Like, don't get me wrong, my not hatred, but my dislike for that game doesn't mean that it is not beautiful.
Yeah. But with that being said, I don't know how I feel about the writing yet. I don't feel like we got quite enough for me to be confident in it. It's definitely trying to be a little more edgy, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. I don't know yet. But what's interesting is the writers here are Amy Hennig and Gary Whitta.
And I like both of them. But it just, I'm listening to it. I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear you talk anymore.
Yeah. I don't know if it's just because it's out of context of the full game, if there's a way that it maybe works better, but it was odd. Not off-putting for me totally, but a little like, okay. Maybe it was just the way the trailer was cut. Hard to say.
I think it might have been that, but
we'll see. Because I think both of them have good track records for great writing. So sounds hard to believe that the game would be badly written.
Yeah,
Gary Whitta wrote the best Star Wars movie. So
Rogue One,
absolutely.
Sure
I thought I was going to get pushback on that.
No,
look. I think Rogue One's great. I actually my favorite Star Wars movie. I can't say it's the best. My favorite is Revenge of the Sith.
That's absolutely the best. Unironically.
I love that movie. I think it's really
not
good.
Empire.
Empire second. You know what? I think I like Force Awakens better.
So what does everyone think about Rainbow Six Extraction coming out January 2022?
It looks interesting just because it's such a departure from what the majority of the series has been.
Can I be on y'all's movie
where
podcast?
It's like very grounded, and now it looks like we're playing something crazy. But yeah, it's not. It doesn't move the needle for me. I don't really care about that game. So
yeah, no, I was good on that one. I actually went outside to smoke a bowl during that trailer. I thought, and I was like, that's Rainbow Six. I'm going to take a minute.
Oh, boy. You just knew. You're like, wait, what?
Well, I was watching it on my TV, right? So we'll get it in the full 4K, and then I'm like, "This is Rainbow Six." So I put it on my phone, went outside. Once it ended, I came back in.
I got you. All right, so that's done. That's out. It doesn't mean much to me. I'm sure there are people that are excited about it. It looks cooler than normal Rainbow Six does to me, but that still doesn't really move the needle for me.
Right.
Yeah. Next thing up, I'm actually excited about because I've never played it. Alan Wake Remastered, which of course got leaked earlier or whatever. I think it got leaked and then just revealed because it got leaked. Looks awesome. Remedy, of course. I love them. I always thought this game was, I never thought it was survival horror, but I didn't really think about it being like action thriller, which is the more I look into it and the more I see from it is really what it looks like. Kind of Twin Peaks vibes, to a degree. So that's October 5th. That's coming really soon. And also the price for that is fantastic. I think it's $30.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a good game. If you've never played it, I highly recommend playing it.
Yeah. I'm excited for it. So that's coming really soon. The slog of the show, and honestly, it's not even anything more than it looks zero different to me.
Yeah, it really doesn't look different.
Grand Theft Auto 5. I said, wait, okay, this is the PS5 version. Coming March, which if anything, I'm surprised how far off that game is.
Yeah. I almost wonder,
and for it to look the way it did. What is taking a year and a half from when it was first announced?
It said gameplay enhancements. Like what kind? Because you didn't show any that I could tell.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
My theory, and I know I'm insane, is that there's going to be single player DLC on this, and they're not ready to show it.
Ooh,
that's the only theory I can think that would make this make sense.
The Mount Chiliad mystery finally being solved in game.
Something like that, yeah. Because there's I think they solved that in Red Dead 2, if I'm not mistaken. Did they?
What? No, I did not.
Yeah, I could be making that up, but I think I heard that. Either way, I just don't think. I don't see why they wouldn't just do a simple port. Because people would pay $70 for that. For
a simple port with 4K.
If you want me to be inconsistent, this game absolutely should be free. It's a PS3 game. This is a free upgrade.
Hey. No, this is a different version. You're absolutely crazy if you expect a PS5 version for free.
I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. I'm saying it absolutely should be free. That's an 8-year-old game or however much.
Does this game actually have an upgrade cost? Or is it free if you own Grand Theft Auto 5?
I don't know. It's unclear, and Sony talked about online going free and being included with PS.
I remember something was up with it.
Dude, here's the thing, Chris, we all know they can absolutely charge $70 for this, and it would still top the charts every month.
It should be free, and I'll buy it at launch for $70. But it should be free.
It's still in the top 5 monthly sellers every single month. I don't think
that's what I'm saying. They could put this out at 70 and do the same thing. Yeah,
it doesn't.
It's crazy. Either way, I have zero care about that. But here's the thing: if I'm ever going to play the game, it's going to be on PS5. But I don't know. Like Chris was talking about with Red Dead, I think that Rockstar's third-person shooting is so rough and not fun. But I don't know. I know they put first person in, and I played first person Red Dead the whole time. So there might be a salvageable way to do it.
I was not a fan of first person controls in Grand Theft Auto 5, but that's me.
I don't like it either.
That sucks. Because I don't think I would have kept playing Red Dead if it wasn't for first person. I'm being dead honest with you.
Well, Red Dead's bad. GTA 5 is not.
Okay. I haven't beat GTA 5, so I don't know.
I'm very much someone like if I can see my character, I want to.
Yeah, I don't know. The game just felt it's a testament to how bad I think their third person shooting is. That it felt better to me, and that was enough to make me go, okay, yeah, I'm just going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you this: I rode horseback in third person because you could actually tell the game to do that.
Really? I didn't know that.
You could be in first person until you get on the horse.
And that's the thing with GTA 5 that sucks is the FOV is so tiny. When you're in a car, it's like hard.
Oh God. Yeah, first person in a car, I'd want the same thing. Switch to third person view in a car. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely agree there. All right, let's see. Next thing up, Ghostwire Tokyo got shown again. Again, that's a first person action adventure game here. PS5 console exclusive at launch. Here's the weird thing. It got delayed again. I would have thought this is where we would have gotten the date. Yeah. But instead we just got 2022. Which is going to come up in something else later about being surprised of getting zero date. Mm-hmm. But that looks great. I'm still really hyped for it. It's probably good to not have it come out too close to Deathloop, so it's probably better that they pushed it back because they are somewhat similar style of games.
Yeah, I think it looks great. I'm just waiting to see because it's like Tales of Arise. I want to play that game. I'm just not buying it at launch right now. So
yeah, I would probably be on it if it wasn't for Fist and Deathloop.
Yeah,
interesting.
I'd probably be paying Tales right now.
I mean, yeah, you don't have much barrier of entry there, Brad.
Yeah, true. But I would have honestly bought it if it wasn't for Fist, because I'm trying to do better. Well, and then of course you bought it before me, but I'm trying to do better about not buying games until I know I'm going to play them.
Yeah, I wish I was like that.
I still have.
Sometimes I'm keeping you in mind, right? There's games I'm buying sometimes where I'm like, Chris will end up getting to try that even if I don't play it day one. It's me paying you back for all the games I get to play for free. You know what I mean?
That. Yeah, no,
that's why I'm like, hey, I'm going to buy Fist. And you're like, I don't care about it at all. And then you're like, actually, Fist is pretty good.
Yeah, it's good surprise.
It works out. All right, next thing on the list I know is something that Chris is excited about, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Apparently I'm the only one in the world excited for this game.
Here's the thing. I think that Avengers did such a disservice to Square Enix handling of Marvel properties that people don't trust it. That's all it comes down to. I don't think this has anything to do with it being Eidos, or Eidos, however you say that.
Yeah.
I think it's just that people are like, Avengers wasn't it, so I don't think that you're going to do it. But it's a different team. I think you at least got to give this different team the chance to prove their own worth, right?
If we're excited about Wolverine sight unseen, I think we can be excited about another studio trying something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you should.
To be fair, the only reason I'm not hyped about this game, and I'm cautiously optimistic about it, is because of the way the trailers have been cut. It seems like the jokes are not exactly being told, I think, in the way they could be because of the editing of these trailers. So I'm almost curious if these jokes that they're saying in the trailers and just the dialogue is going to be better in the game. Because to me, the dialogue is not the greatest in these trailers.
I agree with that. It's similar to Forspoken. I don't love it or hate it, but it's similar to Forspoken, where I felt like there was a couple of moments where I was like, I wonder if that plays better in context of the situation around it.
And
I do.
Well, I'm just that's where I just stand on it. I think I'm going to end up getting it, especially if it's multiplayer based, but we'll see.
Is it?
I don't think.
I don't know. I don't think it's been said it's not, right. That's the only reason I'm not sure.
I think that it's a single player story based.
If anything, I think that they got to do that after Avengers. They've got to be like, no, this is us doing a 100% single player story based.
I will say, I do have a mini rant on this game because I've been frustrated with this. I'm very tired of the, I don't like the look of this game because it looks like off-brand movie MCU characters. I hate that. First off, this game doesn't look like that at all.
It doesn't.
Second off,
I'm very happy with
the MCU is based off comic books. These people have looks. So you can't, I don't know what people expected. It was a big thing around Avengers where it's like, these look like off-brands. I'm like, no, they look like adaptions of the comic book characters, which is what the movies are and which is what all the other games will be. So they're obviously going to look slightly close. But I remember I was hearing, I think it was Sacred Symbols, they were saying this looks like off-brand Chris Pratt. And I'm like, A, it doesn't look like anything like Chris Pratt.
And no, it doesn't at all.
And B, it looks these characters look almost exactly like the comic books. I don't know what you want.
Now, Chris, I'll say this. I agree with you on the general premise, and I think this game is a good example of how that can work out. And I think that there are clear references, right? Of course, it's going to look like Peter Quill because he wears a red jacket and has a mask.
He's a character.
But I think, exactly. I think the difference here is that I definitely feel more like when I'm looking at Avengers that it's too close, but just barely missing. Where I think in this one, that never approached my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think this game has done a better job of it.
This one is much less bad than Avengers, but even still, these are established characters. It's such a dumb argument to me.
The worst.
It'd be like, Spider-Man has a red suit here too. What are they making off-brand Tom Holland? What are you talking about?
I honestly think the worst case offender was Marvel vs. Capcom, the newest one, where it looked like a mobile game. With the way they designed those characters and not a comic book based, unlike Guardians of the Galaxy, where, for those that don't know, I love Chris Pratt in those movies. Those are some of my favorite Marvel movies. That was not, he is a accurate representation of him as a human. I'm not a massive fan of, but he works out really well.
He doesn't look like Star-Lord. No. Realistically.
Well, he
I like Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah, he plays it well. Those movies are good. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But across the board, I am very happy with the way this game looks visually. Dude, like Rocket and Groot look so good.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me is also how do they handle the non-humanistic looking people? Do they try and go too much towards making them look photorealistic, or do they lean into their style a bit? And I'm glad to see that they leaned into the style a little more.
Although it would be funny to have a super realistic raccoon with the other character design.
That would be, listen, if James Gunn got to redo Guardians of the Galaxy, that's what it would be.
He's a real raccoon.
Yep. Just like that thing with if Suicide Squad. Weasel, yeah.
Oh boy.
I just think about that scene of Bucky picking up Rocket, but with a real raccoon.
It's like hissing at him.
Anyway, please.
Next game is also something that I don't know. Of course, I'm somewhat drawn to the London-y look of what they chose to do with vampires because that's what everyone does. Mm-hmm. But Blood Hunt, which is it's the battle royale free-to-play vampire masquerade game.
Yeah, bad.
I don't think it looks awful, but I also don't think it looks good enough to push back against the majority of the battle royale market that's already very crowded.
It was definitely filler for the event. It was like, this is something we could add extra in. It looks cool. Honestly, if this was more so of like a Left 4 Dead game, I would be all over it. But
agreed.
If it's if it's battle royale, which it is, then I'm if it's free, I'm more than likely to download it to play a couple games of it and be like, this was interesting, and then just not play it again.
Let it go. You know what I found the most interesting about it is that the Vampire Masquerades franchise is kind of playing both sides right now because they gave the Vampire Masquerade Bloodlines 2 trailer to Xbox and got crapped all over for it actually because that was at the time where everybody was upset that they were just showing CGI.
Oh yeah.
And then now we're seeing the same series, a different game being shown exclusively at the PlayStation. It doesn't mean they're exclusive games, but it's interesting how they're trying to handle marketing. But I think it kind of missed the mark. I'm not going to say it's going to be a bad game, and I'd love to see it come out and do well, but something about it just, I don't know, it doesn't feel right. And I'm not interested in it. I think that might be part of what it is. It feels less interesting to me than anything. So next thing up, this one, the game looks great, but I don't think we really needed to see more of it.
This is it.
But your cat in the bag moment. Deathloop got shown again, of course, with its launch trailer, and it looks excellent.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
It looks so good. But at the same time, I'm torn because I think you need to show the game because it's coming out, and kind of like we talked about with Ratchet and Clank movie, right? You shouldn't be wanting to put out something that's closely linked to you. This is an exclusive, even if it doesn't come from them, without being like, hey, we're going to show it every chance we can.
Yeah, that's the thing is it's getting like, I'm getting Deathloop fatigue. So like when I was watching this, because I was halfway having to pay attention to it, I just ignored it because, and I'll get into that at the very last game to talk about. But at this point, I feel like, I'm excited for this game. I don't need anything else to tell me to be more excited for this game.
Yeah, but I think that's just because our finger's on the pulse, right? And I think that makes it worse for us. So we get that feeling of we've seen this too many times, but I think most people are probably, this is only like their second, maybe third time of seeing it, and this might have been the thing that pushed them to want to play it.
It was for me.
Yeah,
and I've seen it every time. So here's what I have to say. This is a great example of why everyone gets upset about PlayStation showcases and overhyped. Because it's what I was saying when we have to be realistic about stuff. And me and Saul kind of had this conversation last week. This has to be here.
It does.
And the fact that people are like, why did they show Deathloop again? They showed Deathloop again because
it comes out next
It comes
week.
out, but it's a game they have. And you have, people are sitting here like, we're getting Silent Hill, we're getting all this stuff. No, you got a realistic first look at what Sony is doing. Deathloop is one of those things. They're not going to give you all their announcements at once.
Yep.
So if you want a showcase like this, you're going to see Deathloop. You're going to see Alan Wake and GTA 5. You're going to see that too. You're going to see stuff that I could give two shits about, like Chia. Don't care. That's going to be there. If you want to get hyped about an event, I remember watching some live streams and people were very upset for the first half because this is so boring. I'm like,
really?
Yeah.
Boy.
I was watching that guy MBG and he's whining about it all until Wolverine. And I'm like, what? You're a PlayStation guy. Like you're the PlayStation guy. He's got more followers than us. So you want to come on the show, you can.
I'm joking, by the way.
But it's like how you don't have a realistic view of what these things are if you're upset about the beginning of that show. The beginning of that show, had KOTOR in it, so I don't know what you're talking about.
That set the stage for the rest of it, of like the hype level being up.
You know, the middle had fat, right? You could have trimmed the middle, but then you would have gotten a 20-minute showcase, and it's like, well, Sony didn't show me nearly enough. You can't have it the best of both worlds. There is never going to be a showcase that Sony does that completely knocks your socks off from beginning to end. It's happened. Sure,
but it's also what led us to the point where Sony's like, we're not going to be at E3 because we keep showing too much crap.
Exactly.
Like, we're showing it's awesome and it gets everybody hyped, but then we can't release the game for 3 years and people are complaining. It's kind of like you said, you can't have your cake and eat it too in this situation. Either Sony's going to be responsible, focus on things that are coming out that are really going to move the system right now, and also show the future and kind of blend those two together.
Right. Fans of these stuff have to start being more realistic. It's what I've been saying this whole time. And the realistic view was this was a killer show.
So good.
And if you want to be upset because you saw GTA 5 for 3 minutes and there was a literal 3-minute Deathloop trailer, keep in mind the game comes out in 4 days.
Yeah.
Like you gotta get yourself in check. That's insane. When I was listening to him and he's like, oh, this is so disappointing, Sony dropped the ball, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, bro? First off, you're the guy who's been sucking on Hassan Karaman's dick for 6 months. And second off, like, how are you the PlayStation guy and you're like, this sucks? I don't mean to like call him out because this was a problem for a lot of people that I was watching, because I love watching the reaction stuff. He was why are they doing this? I'm like, guys, get yourselves in check. The reason that you're disappointed is because you expected the world and you're not going to get it. You know, there's going to be another showcase in I think December is what I've heard from reading leaks and stuff.
Wait, showcase or?
Yes, another. So the leak I read was bigger than this, and the guy who leaked this and was leaking other stuff. So I believe it. And you know, that if that one, you know, sure, maybe they won't, you know, they don't have anything announced for that window really. So you're going to see Horizon, you're going to see Gran Turismo, you're going to see God of War
again,
you're going to see Ghostwire. Hell, you're probably going to see the Deathloop DLC if that exists, and then we're going to whine about it. And it's when the ending comes out and it's, you know, Last of Us Factions and Last of Us Remake is there, and maybe Infamous, you know, all this kind of stuff, and then, you know, you gotta calm. We have to calm down. This was an incredible showcase, and just because the beginning was a little, it was still great.
No, the beginning was, I think, the best part. Honestly, the beginning and the very end.
Honestly, I thought the beginning paced out the show so well. Even though, you get to that middle where you're kind of like, do I need to see this? No, me personally. Does Sony need to show this?
Hey,
yes,
exactly.
You're an hour ahead of us, right, Chris? Okay,
we're coming up. We gotta get going. All right. Well, Chris gave his big spiel. I was letting him do it.
Right.
All right. So, of course, Chris talked about Chia. Chia looks fine to me. Like, it looks cute. I may play it. It's not something that actively excites me, but I think it's the right kind of thing to show. Because while we're talking about Sony showing too much stuff that's similar, at least from their first party, balance that by showing a lot of variety in your.
Well, this is kind of what I was calling for. You know, with them with little games. This is perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
I think so too. And it looks like it's trying to capture some of the stuff that they don't have right now, which is like, how can we look at what Breath of the Wild does? How can we look at kid-friendly exploration? How can we do all these things? And that might do that. Now, this one is really interesting. The next one up, Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, which is both Naughty Dog and Iron Galaxy, which comes into play for a reason. The PS5 version of this is coming early 2022. And then they're saying shortly after, the PC version should be coming out. Now, I think everybody, including me initially, as soon as they said this, I thought Nix's. This is where this came from, just to learn that Iron Galaxy is actually the studio behind the PC port. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I still think the point of buying Nix's is for PC, but I wonder how long this has been in the works. But my bigger thing that I think is weird here is I think you might be able to get away with just the 2 games on PS5. I think on PC, the real move would have been doing these 2 games, as well as taking the Bluepoint PS4 remaster collection that they did and porting that up to PC, putting them all together, and then just to be tongue-in-cheek, call it the Master Thief collection.
Wow.
Sorry.
But I really do mean this. Why? Okay, look. How do you combat Master Chief on PC? Put all of your biggest character, and Nathan Drake is one of their biggest characters, into one collection in a time where it makes sense. Because I got to be honest, this kind of reminds me of like, why would someone who's only been playing Xbox their entire life be excited to jump into Kingdom Hearts 3 on Xbox when they don't know what else is going on?
Yeah,
it feels weird because I'll be honest, 4 is a good game, but the majority of what I think makes 4 really good is how it compounds the previous 3 game stories together into one final outing. I don't know that game is as big of a 1-2 punch if you're coming into them with zero context.
Yeah.
I think Lost Legacy works as a standalone game a lot better than 4 does, even though it still is kind of like, oh, we're looking at old characters. So that'd be my one move. I think it's an odd choice, but
it is an odd choice.
So continuing on from there, the rest of this is all first party. So quick fire, Gran Turismo 7 came back around, got shown. Looks great to me.
Cars. Yep, looks like
it does
a
look like
simulation
cars.
racing game.
I will say, very upset because that beginning, that first 10 seconds, I thought it was Bloodborne.
Yeah, I thought it was Castlevania. I don't know what they were.
I thought it was Castlevania.
I don't know what they were
well.
thinking with that music. I get it, but no.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what they were thinking. Like, got them, because Sony in this show showed they're willing to.
Hey, this is the tease for the Castlevania remake coming from Bluepoint.
All right, MBG. So Wolverine.
Yeah, that's coming March 4th. That looks awesome to people who like that kind of thing. Gran Turismo is a huge franchise for them. And I know while it doesn't, some of us who are looking, I like Gran Turismo. I will definitely be buying this. They're bringing back a lot of features, kind of like picking and choosing all the best features from multiple previous entries, as well as looking at some of Sport, because Sport was a very thin Gran Turismo game. It wasn't a fully featured one, but people still loved it. So it looks good. Next thing up, Spider-Man 2.
Fantastic.
Yeah, buddy.
Boy.
Dude, Kraven and Venom, I know what story they're going with, and if they go 100%, I'm going to poop my pants at the end of it.
I honestly think that's going to be the third game. It is the climax of what you're talking about.
See, I feel like this game is Kraven with some Venom.
Right.
So I think the end of this game will be the ending of. Well, I'm talking about Kraven's Last Hunt. So if you know what happens in the ending of that, I think that's how this game ends, and I would bet that the teaser is him. I don't want to spoil it, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Well,
in the suit.
Yeah, I'm curious how they're going to do with Venom to begin with.
Because I am too.
It's I'm blanking. Not Eddie Brock.
Mm-mm.
Well, we don't know that.
I don't think they gave. We don't know who it would be.
They actually haven't said who.
Yeah,
it's going
technically,
to be.
You would think it's going to be.
Well, you think it's
Harry Osborn. Yeah, I don't know why I can't think of his name. I can't want to say Frank Osborn. That is.
And I feel like that's probably right. And as weird as that is, I actually think the right move for their world right now would actually be to lean toward that, because they have a lot of interesting ways to go. And kind of like Chris talked about, right? This is based off of comics, but you still want to surprise people. You don't want it, like, you want to lean into things that people like. So if they can pull from Kraven's Last Hunt and kind of go through that, and then also kind of pull from their own interesting, unique twist on something, I think kind of melding stories together and making them unique to where you feel like there's a sense of familiarity if you're a fan of the comics, but then there's also this new mystery that you're seeing unfold. That's the best of both worlds, and I think that's how they really do this.
I don't know if they have the balls to do this, but I hope they do. I hope this is Kraven and Harry, Venom, Peter, Miles. The end of Harry loses it at the end. Peter gets the Venom suit, and the third game is Miles versus Peter.
Bro. Woo!
That would be cool.
What a series of events that would be.
Because that's Venom's goal is always to get to Spider-Man.
Pretty much.
It's never like everyone else is just a vessel. Spider-Man's the perfect vessel. So I pray to God that the third game is Miles trying to save Peter. It would actually be more effective if it was Peter trying to save Miles, but I don't think.
I agree. That would be really interesting, and that would be the twist, right? Because you know what? This is going to be amazing. I can even look. We're pure speculation. Right so 2023 on this. I think here's the thing. I was both really excited to see it and also like, okay. Depending on when in 2023, this might have been a little too early. Still cool. I don't necessarily hate it. If they kind of follow it feels very in line with the initial Spider-Man reveal where they didn't show much besides story beats and kind of got you hyped on that, and then they started showing more of the following. So I could see us getting real gameplay on this sometime around August of next year, maybe.
We'll what see. Though, it's only a year and a half.
Yeah, it's only, and exactly the first Spider-Man was announced and released within around that 18-month period. So
which is why my theory. Go ahead, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're good. What's your theory?
My theory is that Wolverine is first.
See, I was curious as to what you thought on that. I was wondering too, because here's the thing. How many teams does Insomniac internally actually have? Has it grown at all since they got purchased?
I would bet, yeah.
I would bet as well. So could it be feasibly possible that even though they just got off of Ratchet and before that they got off of what I imagine was a smaller team handling Miles Morales, since it's reusing assets and to a degree, because also there had to have been a team working on Spider-Man Remastered. Was it the same team? Doubtful, but it could have been. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm kind of curious. Is Insomniac's actual way to just start dominating PlayStation to have a yearly release? Because then you would have 2019 being 2020, I guess, actually being Spider-Man Miles Morales, 21 being Ratchet, 22 being Wolverine, 23 being Spider-Man, and then whatever VR games that you can get through in that. Dude, if they can hit that kind of pacing, and which I already think Insomniac's the studio Sony needed to buy to get great games out quickly.
Yeah. I don't know. I could be crazy, but if you just look at the way that Spider-Man was shown, it was 2016 in E3 was the teaser, and it came out in 2018 November. That's a year and a half. I could be crazy because Spider-Man, they teased Spider-Man, and it's almost 2 years away. But I think the logic tracks that this at least fits that timeline.
Chris, are you familiar with?
And otherwise, why show it? Go ahead,
Chris. Are you familiar with Amazing Spider-Man 698 with Doc Ock?
You'd have to be. Yes, I know. I think so.
Okay, that would be. Are
you talking about Superior?
No, Amazing.
Okay, then I'm not 100%.
This is the one with Doc Ock and Peter and a tube. That's all I'm going to say, really.
No, I don't think.
Okay, never mind then.
Gotcha.
Never mind.
Well, I want to know what you were thinking.
Well, yeah. Okay. I'm not sure I know. So
there's. I guess I could just spoil 698 then. But it's eventually like Doc Ock, his body is laying in a tube and he's dying, and he somehow takes over Peter Parker's body, and Peter Parker's
that's Superior.
Is that Superior?
That's Superior.
Yes, that's Superior. That's what I thought you were talking about.
Hey, I don't know why I thought it was amazing, but yeah, okay. I want to see that in a game.
I would like to, but I don't know if you can pull it off the same way that you can in comics.
Yeah,
because I think that the tension comes from being like, why the hell is Peter hitting on other women? Why is he
and being kind of like dickhead? I'm kind of curious though. Can Kraven's Last Hunt be pulled off well in a video game? It's been a while since I've read it, but I can't remember if it's a reveal at what I'm alluding to in that one.
It's a reveal.
Okay, yeah, that'll be hard to.
It's the end of the saga.
That'll be hard to go with, right? Because of voice acting.
Yeah.
Well, as much as I don't want to speed through the show, I know, Chris, I'm trying to be mindful of your timeline here, buddy.
3:00 was like, I have a little bit of wiggle.
To be fair, I also haven't eaten at all today, and it is now 2:00. So we'll save Spider-Man talk for another time.
Okay. Yes. So look, last thing. Oh, and really there's one thing, that Radiohead game I completely skipped over. I don't know what it is. So it means nothing to me. Yeah. So whatever, that didn't mean anything to me. If it meant something to y'all can feel free to talk about it. But the final big reveal for the showcase was God of War Ragnarok being confirmed that Ragnarok is indeed the name. Even though Corey Barlog was being a little coy about that. Different director, no surprise to me, because every God of War game until that has always changed directors. Okay, mainline, because actually Rue Rasiria from Ready at Dawn directed both of the PSP God of War entries. But Corey Barlog helped write them, interestingly enough. So they've kind of rotated around and had different directors or co-directors at different points in times in the series. So in this case, that's not surprising, but the surprising part, I guess the first thing to say is it looks amazing. It does look really good, and it looks like it's going to continue a lot of things. But to Chris's point, I feel like I'm seeing cross-gen in action right
Yeah,
here.
you do.
The weight of cross-gen.
You do, because
it still looks good, but it looks like it's held back. I mean, it looks so close to God of War.
That's the point. That's what I think you see the proof in the pudding there, is that while the trailer looks good and like the environments look fantastic, it does not look tons like different in terms of God of War. And that could be a testament of how good God of War looked, right? Like that could
I think it's a bit of both.
But it made me super excited for it. I just the last like 20 seconds of that trailer should have been left out. I absolutely think so. And here's why.
Now, you talking about Agrabota?
No, I'm talking about Tyr. Yeah.
Tyr?
So
okay.
I think that Tyr should not have been in this trailer, because now, for those that don't know, Tyr is the Norse god of war, pretty much. It's not his exact title, but it's what he boils down to.
He's a god of battle.
Yeah. And
it's technically what it is.
The problem with that is that now that they revealed him in a trailer, this is going to be misdirection, because I know he's not going to be a major character. And if he is, he's not going to be part of a climax. Maybe his own small little climax, but
I don't know that I agree.
I disagree.
I don't think that they would have put him in the trailer if he ended up being a big part of the story.
I will say
why
this.
I think he's a big part of character? Because the Tyr in this game has two hands.
Bang, bang, bang. There's story to go.
Does Tyr normally have one hand?
Yes, his left hand's gone.
So here's the other thing about this, though, too. You have story to go, but there's also clearly they do not follow exact mythology.
No.
They do what they want to a degree, as we clearly see with Atreus and all the stuff going on there. But the bigger thing going on here, you know what I mean?
It's kind of okay. I don't mind it.
Yeah, no, it's not bad.
Right.
This is exactly what they did with like Kratos, right? They follow the lore pretty close, but they aren't afraid to do what they want to make an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing. If you know any kind of mythology backing, all your questions are answered for you. That doesn't make for an interesting story. You've got to work within those confines and work around them and say, here's interesting ideas that can inform a new way to present this information and actively surprise players. Just like we were talking about with comic book games being able to, or comic book stories in general being adapted to movies and all sorts of things. You can find ways to make them interesting while still being true to who the people are and what the story and the world and inspiration was. But here's the thing. I put on my notes, presumably 2022, because that game originally was announced for 21. And this new trailer that shows off the game in a lot of ways has zero date attached to it. It doesn't even say 2022. What does that mean?
Well, I will say I don't think any, unless I'm wrong, because I wasn't paying too much attention to GC7. I don't think that had date either, and then they announced it later. So I don't necessarily think that's an indicator.
Yeah, I don't know that it is or isn't. I also thought the same thing. I didn't remember seeing a date, but then Herman was like, as you know, we announced it's coming in March. And I was like, did it show March?
Yeah,
and I just
like,
completely missed it. Yeah, but unlike that, Spider-Man showed 2023 like it was the biggest part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that, because we also didn't get a date for Ghostwire, but that's also not internal studio. So maybe Sony doesn't really get to control that. Maybe that's more of their own messaging.
Man,
I don't know.
All in all, though, the show was great. I had zero complaints. Even the couple little parts that we've seen, like seeing Deathloop again, seeing Grand Theft Auto, seeing all these games again, I'm like, and overall, though, it's a fantastic show.
So I have a question for both of you, because I think that this is really important for not Sony necessarily as much as the studio and the game. I think that this was the hit or miss moment, the real breaking moment for Abandon to either appear and be something or to just potentially fade away into obscurity. How strongly do y'all feel about that? Do you think if Abandon do you think it really needed to pop here to show that it's not just wasting our time?
No, because to be fair, with conspiracy theories with Abandon, it could be especially if it's involving Kojima, he's thought of things. So which at this point I'm getting, I don't know, maybe this whole radio silence thing they're doing is part of it, but it's hard to say, but I think that Kojima would have made this even if the game's coming out this year, he would have said, don't put it in the showcase.
I don't know how I feel about that. It's not even. I just think that the more you go, the more you run the risk of people being angry. But I don't know, because realistically, to your point, right? Even if this goes all the way into the ground and everyone loses all faith for Abandon, and then suddenly it is revealed that it's Kojima, it would all be washed away.
The hype would be back 100 times over, and Metal Gear Solid or Silent Hills will sell tens and tens and thousands of millions of dollars because of that. It will all be forgotten the second it happens. Just like people, this upgrade path thing we talked about how like it's all mended now technically because of this event, like people forgot about it. It's just like that. People will literally like go nuts. I know for me, I'm sick of it. At this point, I don't care anymore. But the second it's Metal Gear Solid is revealed, I would be way more excited for it. I'm way more of a Metal Gear Solid fanboy than I am a Silent Hill fanboy. But either or, I'm going to just go insane.
Okay, Chris, your thoughts on that?
I'm no longer following BlueBox. Don't care. But I think
that's what I think happens. So I guess this is my thing to say, Saul. If it turns out that it's not Kojima, this was really the make or break moment for the actual BlueBox studio to come out and say, we are real. This is what we're working on, even if it was rough. Now I agree with you. If it's Kojima, it doesn't matter. It washes it all away. If it's not Kojima, it's done. People have lost all interest. The thing is that the game, even with everything going on, had this thing of where it was in people's mind because it was just so interesting of everything going on around it. It was intriguing, and you wanted to follow it because you just, even if you didn't care about any of the games, you just want to know what's going on. But what ends up happening now is that if they keep doing this was their moment to come out and say, here's who we really are, and this is why you should care about this game. And then they would have gotten some percentage of people to care. I think for the majority, though, everybody who they had kind of wrapped around their finger has completely slid off.
Yeah.
And again, unless it's a Kojima reveal, every bit of this has been wasted.
Yeah.
Even if they stumbled into this accidental viral marketing and then leaned into it, they could have capitalized. I think they've completely missed their chance to do so if they are not Kojima.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, if the game is good, it will be good anyway.
It's just getting people to play it.
I know what I mean? I don't respect the studio anymore at this point because
that's for sure.
They've played a bad game, and then the evidence of their studio is nothing.
Yeah. And I think that's just kind of a little buried in the ground. But guys, this has been a fun episode. It's been episode 228. For those that watch along and that enjoy, you can find us in quite a lot of places. You could follow us on or subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/Nartech. And of course, we're across almost all podcast services, all major ones at least. And if you want to join in for some of the fun, whether it's community's takes or just regular hijinks with conversations, go check out our Discord, which will be in the link of the description below, and our Twitter, which is Triangle SQRD, and of course our Facebook group, which is Triangle Squared A PlayStation Podcast. Most importantly, if you just want to help support the channel out, even at $1 a month, you can follow us at patreon.com/Nartech, where all those funds, they don't go to our pockets. They don't go to, games or anything like that. They go to making the show better. We're recording from home now because Brett had some COVID exposure to him, and I'm one of those that's at risk. So having this camera be able to film and everything else has been helpful because of that fund there. You get some cool benefits as well, like quarterly custom cases that you get to pick out at a $5 tier. And then, just for being $1, not only do you support the channel, you get some cool Discord stuff. And
So shout out to two in particular. I like to always shout out the ones who come back or who newly sub. So Rude Days 93 and Jason Clendenning both had to cancel subs for whatever reason. We of course see what's going on, and we appreciate any level of patronage we get. But it's even better and so awesome to see you guys come back. Rude Days re-upped for $5 a month, and Jason for $7.
Thank you guys.
So thank you guys. Really, really super appreciate it, and I'm glad that you find that value to feel comfortable doing so. So we hope we continue to offer that to you. But of course, it's time to wrap this show up. Thank both of you guys for joining me. Like Saul said, this has been 228. We will see you guys next week. But community's take, of course, if you aren't aware, go hit those things up that Saul said so you can talk to us about how you thought the showcase went, and if you agree with Chris that it was great and us that it was great, or if you hate the fact that they have to show stuff off, make sure you let us know. And we'll see you guys next week and talk about those things. So lastly, of course, shouting out our patrons over on patreon.com/Nartech. And those are, of course, Jason Clendenning, Rude Days 93, Kyle Grimm, Josh Jarrell, Matthew Green, my name is Dan, Luke Bartolomeo, Sean Santarud, Funk Turkey, Danny Villalobos, Corey Hickerson, Blake Popst, Kevin Baconbits, Mark Schutz, Shadowist, Steven Salazar, The Stonard, Rich, Constantly Kenny, Solitary Red, Chris Figs, Zachary Sawyer, Landis, Rude Days 93, Josh Drago, Bailey Robertson, Brian, Donovan Williams, Derek Porter, Josh Ayers, Joshua Lago, Sean 1 Neo, Tyler Powers, Jehudi MD, Rob Warppoint, Richard Schaefer, and Ham and Egger. Thank you all.